P's and B's, pretty please. Outcold Gaming on the other side. SK will have the first shot. We've seen pretty standard bans thus far, as today is day number 2 of our placements. And of course, we saw the console squads play it out on Sunday. So a lot of times we've seen the Isis ban, the Amaterasu ban, the Persephone ban, the Set ban. Circuit has been team to team, but also largely popular. And here, the bans seem to be pretty standard as everybody going across the board. That said, Susano taken away by SK Gaming.
A shot at FrostiaK, knowing the true power. If he gets rolling off early, it feels like FrostiaK is that player that Outcold rely on to carry in the late game. But the other two bans, between the Set and the Circuit, taking a shot at Spudio that played it yesterday, and then taking a shot at Breez on that Circuit support as well.
The Thor, also a very powerful pick, for what it's worth. Something
For
FrostiaK does
Olorun!
enjoy playing, but particularly SK Gaming, Sam for Soccer has been the guy driving this battleship and giving him Thor one of the more powerful selections, not just in raw power level, but ability to rotate the map. You love to see it. Across the way, Arthur and the Morrigan.
Now, ideally, you would expect Thor to be in the jungle now, maybe in the solo lane as well for Belair, but some players, specifically Anister, have been piloting it in the long lane, and I'm not sure if this is kind of Zapman style, but we don't know how SK have been preparing so far in the placements. I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of show us this unorthodox opening, because Thor, very strong in the 1v1 against a squishy mage like Morrigan in the long lane, should be able to win the matchup.
Let the light be the
Achilles
judge.
and Ullr will be choices for SK Gaming as well. Ullr, certainly something a number of players on this team can play, as is Achilles. Across the way, Olorun being grabbed up by OCG, a good team fight character.
Definitely is going to be important for SK to figure out ways to shut down this Olorun. Immobile by most standards, relies heavily on the ultimate for peel and engagements, as well as that knock-up with a little bit of sustain. We've seen Ravana very often to try to counter this Olorun. I don't know how often Belair has played it, but already with Achilles locked in, I don't expect him to suddenly switch it up.
I mean, we'll see. The Achilles, I have been a big fan of Achilles Jungle. Scream brought it out a couple of weeks ago. Don't forget that second ability is percent power. So being built power is kind of cute. Belair loves him some Ravana, but right there does not look like the direction we'll be going into. Geb is the answer from Outcold, whereas SK are looking for a Xing and a mid lane mage.
To ruins.
That'll be Hera. So it looks like Hera and Ullr will wind up in the hands of Zapman or Paul, depending on how they're feeling.
Venenu and Moswell playing the Hera, I think, opened up some eyeballs for the rest of the teams now with SK drafting this. It's good control, honestly. If you can polymorph the Gep before the shield, before the Cataclysm, and you blow them up, I think that's the strategy from SK Gaming. They have plenty of burst damage with the Ullr, Thor, Achilles, and then you got the Fatal Strike from the Achilles to really shut down Breez on this Gep support.
The Hera's got some long-range initiation. That knockup is really strong. Her early game's a little weak, but with the recent start of rushing boots into Doomworm, that kind of helps out where Hera kind of has the issues, and so that's why I think we've seen a number of players go to it. I'll be honest with you. I think Hera's actually going to wind up in the hands of Zapman.
Yeah, I see that, because when we think of Ullr nowadays, when it's Zapman and Paul in the mid lane, it generally goes into Paul's hands. He's very aggressive with his god. He honestly was the reason that I think against E United that they won that set, playing the Ullr fantastically towards the late game.
Across the way, Outcold Gaming have amassed the Morrigan and Batz. Two Fear No Evils can be abysmal to deal with. The Morrigan also has a couple of other good options. I love Thor, and I love Xing as a choice for what the Morrigan wants to do there.
Great team fight and control from Outcold Gaming. The Cataclysm, the Fear No Evil, the Sanctified Field, but it's kind of like a one-and-done kind of team fight potential. If those ultimates are not available, the power of Outcold Gaming heavily diminishes, whereas SK Gaming can look for a long-range poke. You got Thor to set up the Ullr, to set up the Hera. Hera can do the same on her own side by dropping the polymorph. So I'm liking SK's draft a little bit more for the poke and re-engage.
See, at the same time, with Outcold Gaming, they have some of the best ultimates to answer when SK go to engage. Thor lands down, Fear No Evil. You can't do anything about it. Xing comes in, Fear No Evil, or slow down with Olorun. Obviously, pre-toss Xing can deal with the ultimate, but if you time Olorun to roll out the carpet after everybody's thrown, there's some nice answers. So I think this is going to be a fun one to watch.
I agree. You got to be patient with your Thor ultimate. You don't want to dive in when Fear No Evil or Cataclysm is available. But around those Gold Fury Fire Giant dances and objective control fights, I got to favor SK here because they control more space and they should be able to outpoke Outcold Gaming. They're going to need to rely on Olorun to sustain them up if they receive that poke.
Yeah, that will be an issue. King Arthur's got to stay kind of frontline, but safe at the same time. SK Gaming taking on Outcold. Ready, set, go.
Game number 1 here, and SK Gaming kind of have the SPL hopes here on their shoulders. Finch and Aggro on the call. And so far, Space Station and Obey both had early struggles here in the placement weeks, but SK are by far the top seed. I expect them to come out strong, and in fact, they're already active, looking for Dimi here in the jungle for some damage early. Some blinks rather expended. No beads, though. Everyone's okay.
Quick blink by Breez was certainly necessary because that would have been first blood for SK Gaming. That's who Paul was looking for, but good reaction time by Breez. And he's a guy I'm really looking at in this set, Finch, because SK Gaming, notorious for their early pressure, their ability to kill you over and over again early on. And he's playing Geb, a support that dies over and over again early on pretty easily. I think Breez is going to have to... This is the most pressure Breez is going to be under in his time playing Smite. And I'm curious to see how he's going to handle it.
And it's not just that this is a team that likes to play pressure, but they've drafted it too. Thor, Ullr, Xing, Chen. That is a nasty 3v3 they're going to have to contend with early on in this game. And Morrigan, Geb, and Batz, I mean, they don't love to fight right away. That could potentially be trouble for them. But Zapman, an early gank here from Breez, does bring him down low and establish some pressure from Spudio. Do you have that same read on the 3v3 matchup, though, that SK just have way more pressure here?
Absolutely. I mean, Ullr Thor is pressure on demand. It's very difficult to contest with that at any point, let alone when you've got something like a Morrigan Geb that both take a little bit to kind of build up. But don't forget that Prime can just transform into that Thor if he so needs it. The Olorun to change a fight with that ultimate. I mean, there are options available here once Prime hits level 5.
And it's going to be a lot on Prime, I'm thinking, especially trying to keep them in this one, as the purple buff is successfully defended by the Order side team here to make sure he's getting maximum value out of this Changeling ultimate. He's got a lot of really good targets to turn into. The Fear No Evil and turning into Spudio could both be great defensive tools. He can even turn into this Geb, or as you mentioned, turning into an Achilles or a Thor for some more aggression. Certainly nothing wrong with that. So Prime picking those spots correctly, the team effectively communicating what it is that they need. It's going to be a lot on his shoulders.
I think we're going to see the majority of transformations be towards FrostiaK's on Batz, which makes even more pressure on FrostiaK to not fall behind. Because
sure,
that takes your best transformation and might negate it a little bit if you're Prime. Maybe Belair would be a good one in the early game if you're trying to kill NeilMah in particular, just get him down to that execute threshold. I think that this game for SK really is dependent on their 3v3. How well can they use this pressure? I mean, Prime has not looked like Prime of old a lot of this year.
Sure.
I don't think he looked particularly great yesterday, despite a close win. I think that if I'm Paul, looking at what I saw yesterday, I'm asking for something exactly like Ullr, and I'm saying, let me go to work, because I feel like I can make plays.
And Paul's the kind of guy that you need to be able to step up in moments like this. I mean, I think if SK, as the top-seeded team here, the top-seeded SPL team in this whole bracket, comes out and smacks Outcold in the mouth here in Game 1, that's huge. If they come out and they get trounced, even if they end up winning the set, I think it kind of weakens that aura around them a little bit. I think there is something to be said for coming out and kind of establishing that top dog position right away.
Especially with the SPL teams losing yesterday.
Yeah.
I mean, that kind of takes a lot of the aura around SPL teams away right away to have them go 0-2. Now, SSG and Obey are not the same quality of team of SK and LG in my mind, but we had high hopes for them. I think both teams have shown that they can be up to that quality.
Right.
I don't think we saw it yesterday from those teams, for what it's worth.
Yeah, they both had moments where they looked good, but certainly not the end result that either one of them would have been looking for. They'll have a chance in that lower bracket to look for some redemption later on, but SK and LG, I'm assuming, would much prefer to stay up here where the path is a little bit easier despite the stiffer competition, and you're not constantly under threat of being eliminated at any given moment. And you talked about it already, right? With Breez here on Outcold, if they're up against the SPL teams who really want to win this badly. They're going to need him to perform well. As Spudio under duress, Argus has already been dropped by Zapman, and Neil on his way to join the roots here as well. And that's first blood for Zapman, and FrostiaK elsewhere has taken care of Dimi. They ganked both lanes at once.
And they got 2 for 2. Sam wasn't even level 5 yet and still is able to kill Dimi. Belair didn't use his ultimate. I mean, that must have just been an overextension from Dimi before he got his Glad Shield. But that's a perfect start for SK, especially when you factor in that Spudio had to use the beads from NeilMah's Blink in. That means that he is, as you say, super dead to the next form of NeilMah's rotation or FrostiaK's rotation. Don't be surprised if Spudio falls again before those beads come up.
And that, I mean, it did use FrostiaK over there and right, but I don't even know how much of that was the 3v3, the way we might have thought, really being what got them ahead early. This is big for SK. The Hera over in the long lane, getting a nice first blood kill, getting this Achilles off to a good start by pushing this King Arthur down. Those weren't even the matchups we thought would be favoring SK, and now here they are, and they are using this Thor to get aggressive yet again. Sam takes to the sky, but with this safe positioning from Dimi, yeah, he should be okay.
Too far. Good awareness by Dimi, understanding that he could be in trouble at this point. Knows that he's vulnerable to another gank right away. FrostiaK gonna go aggressive here against Paul, but his beads are still good.
Good hammer, though, coming out for FrostiaK, and that's clean as you could ask for. FrostiaK didn't stand much of a chance there. Had beads, maybe could have avoided being double tapped if he'd known it was coming, but I just don't think that he did. That's just clean from Sam.
And I love Sam's pathing throughout all of this engagement, right? I mean, he tries to gank solo, probably ults from a little bit too far away, gives that up right away, takes a good assassin pathing towards mid, not going to the front of the fight, but to the back immediately. And then he just walks over and takes the enemy jungle at the exact same time, knowing that Belair has Dimi locked up in that lane. Blue buff invaded and the back harpies invaded by FrostiaK. I mean, this is a sick start for him, and that's exactly what you're looking for SK. The 3v3 in mid is obviously important for this team, but it's really been because FrostiaK has been a premier jungler in the SPL these last few weeks.
FrostiaK's leap is down, but the rest of SK aren't looking for a fight. They stole the red, and they're done after that successful buff invade. I mean, you talked about it earlier, how the other SPL teams had struggled, and you kind of alluded to how SK, slightly higher caliber, we'll talk about it later, as Spudio is in some trouble yet again, thrown right into Argus, and good luck getting out of that one. He's been flattened here on the left-hand side, but the point I was making about here at SK is that they've always been in this weird spot. They weren't quite in the top 6, but you definitely couldn't have said they were in the bottom either. They had this sort of weird spot all to their own, the perfect middle ground, it felt like, right in between. So I think that there are a lot of high expectations for them to continue to execute just like this.
Absolutely. I mean, you look at SK Gaming and you know that this is a World Championship quality team. Now, I don't think that they would be the favorites by any stretch to win the World Championship, but they certainly have the potential to make it there and give problems to some of the actual World Champion favorite teams.
Yeah, you wouldn't scratch your head if SK won, right? You'd be like, man, they must have popped off.
Yeah, exactly. They have that potential. I mean, they had it last year. My only concern with this team was, when you think back to last year's run as Trifecta, remember, they started off with a really bad loss to that Insignum roster, I believe, that put them down to the lower bracket very early on. Then they got red hot and ran the bracket from there.
Sam takes to the sky yet again. He is insistent on this solo lane gank, but can't make it work here this time. And FrostiaK's lurking. I don't know if Sam knows, but now he's placed a ward. Great awareness from him. Allows him to get some free poke. And Neil's coming in for the pincer. FrostiaK's trap is going to spring on himself. FrostiaK shuts him down.
That was just really odd. Now Blink Cataclysm coming in from Breez, but not enough damage to take down Sam. He's A-okay. Dimi, I don't think I can say the same. Executed by Belair.
And they've been able to grab one more with the Whirlwind of Rage and Steel. Sam comes back in with a hammer. Even Paul is showing up. Fatal Strike can't quite get around the wall as Prime comes in, turning into the Thor, but he's walking into the wood chipper. Another kill for SK. This one goes to Belair, 7-0.
Now, I highlighted Breez early on about he's got to play well against this team because this is his best competition that he's played against so far in his career.
Yeah.
But a lot of my conversation yesterday around Outcold was centered around FrostiaK. What's he going to do in the jungle? It's important for him to look like an SPL level jungler that we know he can be. I mean, he tore it up at the SPL level last year. He was a premier jungler in the league in Europe last year. His start today has been not good. I mean, that fight around blue buff, he eats every piece of Sam's damage, has jump up the entire time, has ult, has beads, doesn't use ult until the very end, and just dies to the pressure from Outcold or from SK without making them use a whole lot or expending a whole lot of damage now he is impossibly behind. He's down a level to NeilMah. He loses the trade against Xing Chen at this point in the game.
Yeah.
He is a complete non-factor, and like we said earlier on, if Prime's best transformation target is Hun Batz, and the Hun Batz falls this far behind, now it hurts you twice.
And I wonder how much of it is, you know, sort of playing here at the SML. Maybe some of those other SML junglers don't expect you to be lurking there at the blue buff, waiting to contest. But Sam clearly thought that that was an option. He drops the ward there, and then suddenly FrostiaK's the one with no information, and he gets caught off guard. And you're right, I mean, he fails to react after that. But I wonder how much of it is just not even having been in the mindset of needing to play defensive, as now Belair has been caught by Dimi. Frosty's on his way, but he went beads, not blink. No way he closes that gap, and Belair makes it out.
I love the way that SK's played. I mean, it feels a little bit weird that Sam's spending so much time over here, but
yeah,
where's the one who's looked like the best player on Outcold all year? It's either Spudio or Dimi.
Yep.
And Spudio has been handled so far. Might as well handle Belair.
Belair's in some trouble here on the right-hand side, but in comes the big dunk from Sam. Dimi already to execute Threshold. Breez does find the Cataclysm into the Shockwave, but now he's been left isolated with no damage dealers. FrostiaK loops all the way around. Neil keeps him zoned out, and Breez has nowhere to go. Another 2-0 for SK.
It seems like it's just child's play for them at this point. FrostiaK's in trouble underneath this tier 1. Sam's wall misses, which may have saved his life, but NeilMah's red buff Xing Chen will take care of it. Neil has had a great game as well. He's been everywhere the action is, which is very hard when there's 10 kills in 10 minutes.
He's got 9
for
that
a
he's been part
support
of.
to be there, but exactly right. 9 kill participation, 1 kill, 8 assists for NeilMah. Zapman has played this lane basically to perfection so far. SK Gaming look prepared. They look ready to go, exactly what they want to do. They came in with a game plan, and the best part about this is that this draft shouldn't catch anybody off guard.
No.
SK Gaming has picked Thor, Ullr, and Achilles top 3 for the last 3 months,
Yeah.
it's felt like. They have shown nothing to me in this game. Maybe that Zapman can play the Hera, and that's not automatically going to Paul. That might be new information, but you could expect that that's a possibility. SK shouldn't have to show anything here with how Outcold is playing so far.
No, not at all. This has been dominance from SK. I mean, and to be honest, it's not too big of a surprise. SK, as I've said, are the top team in this pool just in terms of their past performance. Obviously, anyone can get hot here and win now that they're at the event. But the expectation for SK were that they were making it through. It's who else is joining them. And so far, they're looking like that's the case. Now, remember, Outcold struggled a bit against Hype Unit from Xbox when we saw them playing yesterday. Maybe they're not quite on their A game, but they've got to turn it around quick. This Gold Fury's about to go down, and they're not even going to be around to contest, but they're down 8K. I don't even know if they can, or 6K.
No chance. You can't come in and contest this. It'll just turn out poorly for you. That's going to push it up to 7,500.
Goodness.
I mean, at this point, this is SK Gaming's game to lose. You really need massive overextension at least 2 or 3 times, probably around a Fire Giant. We are in life support mode now if you're Outcold.
And that's one more benefit of their seeding. You know, they kind of got to watch what happened to Space Station and Obey yesterday. Probably no chance as Belair finds a solo kill on an underlevel Dimi that they underestimate any of their opponents after watching the way that some of these other teams in this pool played yesterday. They came in confident.
This is so Paul, man. No other mid laner does this, where he just stands on your tower line and dares you to come at him. And you know you shouldn't, but you really want to, because
Sure.
you shouldn't be able to do that at this level. You shouldn't be able to just stand at the tower line. Maybe in this type of game, you can get away with it.
FrostiaK low, he can't even come over and hold this tier 1 tower, especially not if Dimi can. Pyromancer going to go down in favor of SK Gaming here as well. The teleport does come through, but I don't even know how much Dimi wants to actually be here. It's the level 13 Belair he's suddenly saying hello to, and some backup coming from Zapman. Looks like Zap's willing to commit further to this, but Belair isn't. Dimi should be okay.
Argus up for Zap, but wise decision to just let Dimi go. I mean, Dimi's very far behind and certainly in kill range for him, but you have to be pretty accurate with everything, and once the polymorph misses, I think it's the right time to back it up. I mean, if you're on Outcold at this point, you're definitely thinking about how you're changing your draft in game 2. Now, that's probably not happening in the conversation because you don't want to give up at this point in the team comms, but these are experienced players, man. I mean, Prime's played enough of these games, usually on SK Gaming's side, where he's just
Right.
dominating teams, but these are realistic guys. They know the position they're in at this point, and you're basically just hoping that SK make a series of really bad decisions.
And as far as adjustments go, I wonder if you want to give FrostiaK something where he can be active a little bit more early. I mean, he had the Fear No Evil for that fight that he loses up there by the blue bus, so that's when Untitled is kind of online. But maybe even still, someone who's a bit more of a brawler might not hurt there for him. But I mean, in this game, it was the side lanes, right? I mean, that was where those first 2 kills came from, so even that adjustment is tough. It's like you said, it's a bog standard draft from SK. It's not as if there's a whole lot from Outcold that you can even have here to try and react to.
If you would have told me with this draft that Prime is just 0-1 and Paul's 0-0-2 in 13 minutes, I'd be like, okay.
That's not so bad, right?
They're doing it. Oh, wait, Dimi's 0-4, Belair's 3-0-5, Sam is 5-0-1. Yeah, this is not going super well, it turns out.
Well, grouped up now and pressuring the Tier 2 tower 14 minutes in. And this does a lot. Outcold have to all be here defending instead of farming. Breez blinks in for the Cataclysm, gets caught by NeilMah and dragged back to the rest of the team. Sam in the background takes to the sky, lands on top of Dimi. Zapman gets the first one, wall perfect to lock in Breez, lock him in the cage, and Sam finds the second one of this engagement. Spudio has to use beads as they're in the full-on disengage. They don't even want the Tier 2. They got their 2 picks and they're heading right back towards FG.
Why not, man? I mean, Outcold have no recourse. The only thing you have to be worried about now if you're SK is PrettyPriMe transforming into the Thor and dunking in on this Fire Giant, but Belair's on zone mode. Look at the ward coverage SK have. I mean, there is not an inch of the jungle that they couldn't see right away. This is easy mode for them at this point.
Yeah, this has been thorough from SK Gaming here so far as they take the Fire Giant 15 minutes into the game, 11,000 gold, 14,000 experience. They're already in control here of this match. And it's just a good sign, man, if you're an SK Gaming fan, that they didn't come in sleeping a little bit. It's the first game of the day. No one came in underperforming. They are ready to go. And if they're this locked in, that is scary news for everybody else in this bracket.
I think that there's a really good argument. I don't know that there's a good argument against it. I think Sam for Soccer is the best player playing here at Placement Week.
Yeah.
I mean, he is just on a roll right now with these last few weeks of play. Sam has a tendency to sometimes have a little bit more quiet games in the early game and then turn up in the late game. I think he's a really great late game assassin, which is, I think, the harder part of the role is finding your spots later on in the game. But when he gets off to a start like this, man, you may as well pack it up because he can drive these leads really, really well. It's those games where the early game doesn't go great and SK falls into passive defense mode a little bit too quickly, where I think they can tend to struggle. They aren't relinquishing a lead like this.
I don't think that there's any team that makes that decision harder and faster than SK to kind of relinquish the map. You're right, and I don't think that's where Sam thrives. It is very much this team's identity, though. Neil and Zap play very well in that mode. So do Belair. I think they're one of the best defensive teams anywhere because of that. But you're right, I think it does kind of sometimes cut off one of their best win conditions in Sam, and it won't be a concern here this time at all for SK Gaming. This far out in front, Sam's just going to continue to run over people.
And look, Belair, I know, sometimes has question marks around him. You know, is he going to be able to play at that high level? I think people often just think about the bad performances and don't give him enough credit for the games where he's really, really good. And in this one, Sam gifts him the lead. I mean, he showed up at his doorstep with a pre-cooked meal. You're not giving Belair a whole lot of credit for his cooking tonight, but he's doing everything right from this point. He's still a really good player at pushing these leads. I mean, he's manhandled Dimi once he got the lead.
SK Gaming with Fire Giant now for another a little under 2 minutes. They've got plenty of time to work. It's Tier 2 tower, take 2, as in comes the Whirlwind of Rage and Steel. That does grab 1. Breez has already been removed off screen, and in comes Argus right underneath the Tier 2. This is a good ultimate from PrettyPriMe turning into FrostiaK, but it doesn't deter them enough. Sam flattens Prime like a pancake, making the doubles. He takes down Spudio. Paul gets Dimi, and that's just probably the game at this point. A full-on deicide as FrostiaK falls to Paul's hand. Now, the thing is, the respawn timers are pretty short. Breez will be back up in a second. But still, SK in control.
I mean, Breez spawned faster than the next minion wave, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. But I agree. I don't think it's going to matter. He'll fall just as easily as he did the first time. SK Gaming blanked Outcold 18-0 in game number 1.
Yeah, this is dominance. Make it 19 as Breez comes out to give one more. I love the valiant effort here from him. Placement, everybody here in the bracket, y'all are on notice. This is the team you're trying to beat right now in SK Gaming. There's one other slot. I guess you don't have to beat them, but this is the bar.
Listen, man, you don't get matching unis like that playing like scrubs, you know? You know when the boys show up to the pickup basketball game and they all got the same shoes and shorts and shirts on, you're in some trouble. That's exactly what you're looking at, man. 19-0. I've got no criticism for SK.
No.
I don't think they could have played that a whole lot better.
And it's huge. I know that Outcold is, the SML second seed from Europe. This isn't maybe the biggest test for SK, but I don't even think it so much mattered who their opposition was. I think what we really need to see from SK was them coming out and playing locked in and focused from game number 1, from minute number 1. They just got to keep this going for the rest of the tournament, and it's hard to imagine who can get in their way.
Not anyone when they're playing like that, man.
No.
I don't think there's a team here at Placements that can beat SK when they play to that level.
Yeah.
I mean, even teams like Luminosity that we have high expectations for, SK Gaming, when they look that good, look pretty much unstoppable.
Hey, you still make it to Worlds either way, right? As long as you get to that second place spot, so that wouldn't be too bad either. SK Gaming looking great here. That's only game number 1, though. Maybe Outcold can figure something else out during this break.
Dismantled, destroyed, delightful, kind of fun to watch. 18 minutes of action here, Anatoly. 19 kills for what it's worth. And as some said, welcome to Placements. That's the way a Pro League team plays. Outcold Gaming caught staring.
It was insane to watch how SK started this game because they are the favorite teams to win it all. But so far, they're looking even better than that, honestly. They look like a team that's already supposed to dominate Worlds with this kind of performance.
I mean, I'll be honest with you. I expected SK Gaming to be one of the top teams here, but I did not expect this level of domination. SK Gaming comes out and makes it look like a scrimmage. I mean, it was 11 minutes in for the first Gold Fury and then 18 minutes to watch the Titan fall. That's insane.
It was insane. There was 10,000 gold lead in 13 minutes of play, and in that 19-0 18-minute game, they were up 18,000 gold. And Zapman playing the Hera, no stranger to playing mages, really took advantage of Spudio, but it was because of NeilMah's rotation. He was facilitating so many kills across the map. He was basically 1-0-8 at that 10-minute mark. And then on the opposite side of the map, FrostiaK alleviating a little bit of pressure for Belair, taking advantage of Dimi's aggressiveness on the King Arthur.
And what I love about this is you can see the Zapman notification come up as well. This was at the same time, and this is a great example of what a top level team does to kind of choke somebody out. There's pressure at everywhere. How do you react to that?
It's
That's
hard.
turning the heat up.
FrostiaK had a lot of space control, taking advantage of FrostiaK with the walls, ganking with the Anvil of Dawn. It didn't feel like FrostiaK felt comfortable on this Hun Batz as his teammates were just so isolated. Like, look, FrostiaK by himself in no man's land.
I mean, FrostiaK was a non-factor here. That's what veterans have come to expect. I mean, you know, there's an analyst that says watching FrostiaK is you roll a 6-sided die, you roll a 5 or a 6, he's going to crush it. Anything else, it's just up to chance. And he had no chance that time around,
Unfortunately not, but Outcold Gaming still in this best-of-3 set, need to figure a way back into it, but the way SK Gaming were playing it was so clean. They didn't give up a single death this entire game, and a lot of the ways that they closed out the game was off of their Tier 2 mid-tower push. Around that 14.5 minute mark, they controlled both the red buffs. They were able to use that advantage in their backline of the Paul and Zapman show to get the tower sieging, look looking for any sort of desperation defense was Breez, but then he gets pulled by the Xing. Up in the sky goes FrostiaK, and there's nothing that Outcold Gaming can do. Off of this play, SK Gaming transitioned towards the Fire Giant and never look back after their final Tier 2 tower siege.
Look at the way that they play that as well. Belair is off zoning PrettyPriMe and a secondary carry, and that allows FrostiaK to have the space to do everything you just broke down. I mean, that understanding of the roles. We heard the commentators talk about how Belair is kind of criticized. That's usually me. But one thing that he can do well is play with a lead. When the team gets into trouble, that's where the question marks come out. But he ain't the Riddler when he's got the gold in his pocket, and FrostiaK and the rest of the team ensured that that would happen. Belair was able to do the job, even playing, flank as he's on the Achilles, able to play the pseudo assassin and just make it happen.
You can tell the synergy and the chemistry behind SK Gaming that's been together all of Season 5 basically and Season 6 to be able to get those 2 kills at 3 minutes at the same time in a 2v1 scenario separately. It feels like Outcold Gaming don't have that same kind of synergy. They're kind of waiting for some sort of reaction or over-aggression from SK Gaming that they can't even punish or react to in time.
Game number 2 on the horizon. Picks and bans right here. And with that first blood, I gotta say, I think Zapman would have had it with or without Xing rotation.
Hard to say, but better safe than sorry at the end of the day. He still got the first blood, gold, and experience anyway, so shout-outs to him.
Zapman, if you're watching the VOD, I'll give you my PayPal later. Outcold Gaming here with the first selection, turning things around. SK previously started that one. Looking at the bans, no Ullr, says Outcold. They don't want either Paul or Zapman playing that choice. I like how Aggro brought up that Paul just standing there at the front of the tower, like, all right, dude, do it.
He's just got so much poke pressure. It's insane. And I love this Thor ban because of the global pressure that Sam was applying in the last game. Even the walls was so good enough that FrostiaK couldn't really do anything. Dying on those right side mid camps heavily hindered his ability to farm.
Outcold, I want to see select right here. Either the Circuit is banned, but I want to see them select for FrostiaK. He has been the question mark in my mind.
I will illuminate.
It'll be an Amaterasu, which at the end of the day is just the missing ban, right? So going down from the tier list, I won't jock it. Giving Dimi, one of the best characters in the game, probably not a bad strategy, so I won't complain about that one. SK Gaming, though, that leaves them with Merlin, something that we've seen their carries play very, very well. And they're going to pair up the Wizard.
I think with the set is still available,
dare challenge
but
divine
instead,
rule.
Horus was banned away in game number 1. In the secondary phase, actually, by SK Gaming. So now they're going to take that option for NeilMah. I think he's going to be very aggressive to start off this game.
This is a bloody
Horus
business.
feels like
Shall we get to it then?
like a different genre's Hercules. They do very similar things, albeit Horus a little bit less powerful than the Herc.
Beautiful
But
things
we know
can
that
be
Nina likes
quite
this aggressive nature. Expect to see him at the enemy speed buff. Outcold Gaming, though, no Susano ban means they will grab it for FrostiaK. That's got to be a good look if you're rooting for the blue and white boys. And the Morrigan will be chosen one more time.
And it's a good timing to pick the Susano, because if he doesn't lock it in there, you know SK Gaming are looking to ban out FrostiaK. That would not have been available after the secondary phase. So Morrigan for Outcold Gaming. We'll see how they kind of pilot it this time around, because I wasn't too thrilled about their performance in game number 1. And they need a good target to go into with this Morrigan. Susano has a lot of burst potential. Amaterasu does a lot with a dazzling offensive. So some good options here.
I, too, have been underwhelmed by PrettyPrime's The Morrigan. I've enjoyed watching Prime play virtually every other mage, but the Morrigan doesn't really fit. When I think Prime, I think the classic quintessential mages, you know, Zeus, Vulcan, etc. Not the mage ADCs, and not the Morrigan who's this mage assassin. Hopefully he can make it work this time around and bring us to a game 3. Second round bans out: Hercules, Kronos, Ho Yi, and Set.
Surprised to see Set go this far, but honestly, PrettyPriMe on Morrigan with Amaterasu goes a long way. Now,
Sure.
You don't have to transform into the Amaterasu, but just utilizing that mobility from the Divine Presence Outcold Gaming need to draft very aggressively, and they need to play it very aggressively to allow more freedom for PrettyPriMe to get those shots off, to be that glass cannon that he needs to be to get off the damage.
Cupid going to come through here. Zapman playing the Cupid. That's an old school pick for an old school player. We've seen Wowie lean on this choice a lot. Funball has brought this character out from time to time as well. Usually against the King Arthur. Giant Cripple Field is really what you're looking at when you're looking at Cupid, in addition to just plain old burst damage. But Cripple hurts Susano and also the Jing Wei, for what it's worth.
That's true. Susano not going to be able to use that third strike of the Storm Cut and not able to jet stream teleport after that third ability. So could go into the long lane, but still could go in the hands of Paul. We never really know with SK Gaming. If you're looking for mid pressure against Morrigan, you're looking at physical hunters that can outpoke the Morrigan without any sort of real sustain to survive.
Wisdom shall be
Athena
my
will
shield.
slam down here for Outcold Gaming. Breez, the SMITE LAN rookie, will pick up the Taunt Mother. We'll see how that one works out. SK Gaming trying to move on. If they win this one, they send Outcold down to the losers bracket, and they will play another day. Fenrir is the choice for SK Gaming, and that looks like a Fenrir jungle, which is a little bit of a curveball. We haven't seen much of Fenrir, period, lately, but the last time we saw a lot of Fenrir, he was largely support.
Largely, I agree with you there, and with King Arthur basically having to be in the solo lane, I agree that this is going to be Fenrir for Stanford Soccer. Now the question is, where is his target going to be? There's two ideas with this Fenrir pick. Number one is to gank the solo lane onto Amaterasu. You get the Unchained stun. You guarantee the Ragnarok. King Arthur can do a lot of follow-up damage. And then number two idea is when Athena engages with either the Blink Taunt or the Dash Taunt, she's susceptible towards getting picked up if she doesn't channel and activate the Defender of Olympus to prevent getting bit.
It's also a choice where, don't get me wrong, I think that Fenrir is a strong choice, but it's not a number one selection for the Morrigan to transform into. You know, when you pick a Hun Batz, you're giving the other team and a Fear No Evil. Ragnarok impacts the game in such a way that you kind of need Ragnarok into Cupid ult. You need that follow-up. So the Morrigan won't necessarily, you're not giving Outcold something wonderful here.
I think the idea behind also the Fenrir and the Cupid pick is early to mid-game control the damage, exploit the weaknesses of Outcold Gaming, because Outcold have a strong late-game draft. Amaterasu, Jing Wei, Morrigan, Susano. It's not that good early game, though. So if you can get the Fenrir gank in that solo lane, if you can get a kill early onto the long lane here, onto the Jing Wei, then SK Gaming could do the same exact thing they did in game number one when they ended the game in 18 minutes.
Looking at game number one, I think that's going to be straight up what SK Gaming are thinking about doing. Sam for Soccer getting ready for this one, leaning back as he's ready to rock with it. He was setting the pace of the game with the Thor, and I say that a lot with Thor, and Fenrir is a character that can also do that. Active early, Brutalize does a ton of damage, Unchained does a ton of damage, and brings control earlier than some other choices have it. He's not a character that demands the ultimate in order to be relevant, but once he does have it, can absolutely lock you down. This group of characters for SK Gaming is an early game and mid-game monster.
The Brutalize is a good point that you mentioned, because you can chase down the dashes. Athena dash, Jing Wei agility, Susano on the Storm Kata, even Amaterasu needs to use that dash offensively to cancel the Brutalize.
Yep. A lot of good choices here for SK Gaming's jungler. And again, an oddball pick to see this one come out. Now, when we talk about placement stages before World Championships, we talk about strategies and the ability to hide or whatnot. But when you look at Fenrir specifically, I mean, is this a secret hidden strat that SK are revealing? Or is it just, yeah, we haven't seen the god in a while?
It could be a hidden strat that they could lean on in the future if they do qualify to Worlds, because a lot of teams do prefer, in the SPL at least, a late game draft. Right. So looking at SK's draft with the Arthur, Cupid, Fenrir, have that early game potential to exploit the weaknesses of the Amaterasu, of the Jing potentially, and they have some kind of fallback potential. Merlin provides a lot of damage late game. Horus is a great peeler as well in the late game, really hard to dive in the backline when Horus is disrupting you, knocking you up, slowing you, stunning you as well. And don't forget, he has that protection shred, and that early game protection shred is going to allow Fenrir even more damage than he already has.
What I like about this draft from SK Gaming, totally, as players get ready to jump into game, just a couple more minutes, some last minute things to iron out here. I love that SK are playing against their opponent. Now, it's not disrespect to understand that you are better than your opposition. And when you look at SK against some of the more fierce competition that awaits them at the World Championship, should they make it that far, these early game drafts won't work because those teams are generally a little bit more structured against some early game dominance. And so you can use this strategy here against teams that you know that you have an upper hand against, and then later on in the tournament bring different strategies for those different level teams.
Yeah, SK Gaming, talking with them behind the scenes before this match, felt very confident, but they didn't forget about what happened to them last year against Insignum. So they're confident but cautious at the same time. So this is not a strategy of a composition where they just decided to randomly pick it. There's a lot of merit and credit to the ideas of the Fenrir countering the dashes, being able to maybe take advantage of the early game Amaterasu. Now it comes down to the execution, if they can use this Fenrir pick effectively, because if they don't, then Amaterasu can get into the late game, and then suddenly it's Outcold Gaming that could control the game, stretching it to game number 3.
On the other side, Outcold certainly have a lot riding on this. As I said, double elimination, so if they lose this one, it's not the end of the world. They get a second shot later on during the week. But Outcold are a team that absolutely have a lot to prove. Dimi, 2-time world champion. PrettyPriMe, 2-time runner-up. He's definitely trying to climb back in there. New father as well, playing in the minor league because of the birth of his child. And so he's definitely trying to bring home a win for him and his family. And Breez, if you're just joining us and you haven't watched the minor league, Breez is an accomplished pro league land level player from a different game, Heroes of the Storm. Coming over here and playing at this level already, very impressive. Obviously some holes in his game, but he can live and learn here on the big stage. Outcold have not just a chip on their shoulder. I mean, this is a team that has a bunch to prove. And so game number 2 hopefully should be an improvement for them from game number 1.
I mean, the minor league teams yesterday had a lot to prove as well. They beat both of the console teams and the SPL teams yesterday. Sanguine toppling over Space Station Gaming. Simplicity found an advantage over Obey Alliance, but today against SK Gaming doesn't feel like the minor league team is doing so hot compared to yesterday. Still, though, this game can tell a different tale.
Absolutely. I mean, 18 minutes is a very, very short game, and while SK was absolutely dominant, that just means that Outcold can come with a different approach this time around. Amaterasu for Dimi might just be a stronger choice straight up and down, and I like the Athena for Breez. I think this will allow him to kind of dictate his choices a little bit better. It'll allow him to get the team behind him a little bit more efficiently, and it might allow them to just find the better team fights.
Yeah, they're going to need a lot of execution, and it comes down to vision as well to identify where this Fenrir is going to go out of Sanford Soccer, because this Fenrir is going to be roaming probably more than the last game on this Thor.
We've got 1 minute until teams take the battlefield, everything ironed out, and we're ready to jump into it. Totally last licks. Let's take a look at this draft. SK Gaming, obviously early game. Outcold have a couple of different options. How does Outcold bring us to a game 3?
They're going to have to survive the early game against SK Gaming and control the objectives and then start winning in the late game. They're going to have to win it around 30 to 35 minutes.
Objectives are what Professor Anatoly says are going to be important. The Olorun no longer here. It's going to be about the Morrigan and Amaterasu controlling that space, and hopefully FrostiaK rolls that 5 or 6, because it's going to be a big deal looking at these junglers. Sanford Soccer ran game number 1. It's up to Susano to make him the runner-up in game number 2. I'm very excited to see these teams take the field. Outcold Gaming versus SK. This one should be a bloodbath, because this team, as I said, filled with veterans. They don't want to leave it like game number 1 was.
Like you mentioned, FrostiaK needs to pop off this game if there's any chance for Outcold Gaming to make it to game 3, to avoid the lower bracket half. And in order for him to do that, they're going to need to play with numbers. They can't be the ones getting engaged on in a 1v2.
Well, all that said, it's time to shut up or put up. Outcold Gaming, SK Gaming, ready, set, go.
Thanks for the marathon session there on the desk, fellas. We are moving into game number 2, as Tom said, Outcold versus SK. And if you're Outcold, man, you got to put game 1 way in the rearview mirror. Maybe even turn off the highway a bit and try and forget about that one, because you won't get another chance to try and take this team down. They lose this next game, they're down to the lower bracket, and that is a gauntlet path if you want to qualify through there.
And it's not even that you lose here, you go down in the lower bracket, that makes your path harder. All that is true and relevant. But you can't get 19-0'd.
No, that's pretty tough. Shut out.
Feel like you have a shot still, right? I mean, that's just not, because these players understand that in order to get there and get to the World Championship, they're going to have to beat a team that's pretty close to as good as SK eventually towards the back end if they make a run. And then let's say hypothetically they win that. If their goal is winning Worlds, every team in the Worlds is better than SK.
Yeah, it'd be hard to feel good about your chances in that scenario.
So when you get 19-0'd, it's not a good start. That's my official analysis that I got paid to give you. I do think Outcold's draft has lent itself to a better shot than they had the last time around.
Breez has the dash charged up and an effective steal from him. He'll even pick the buff up for a little bit of small extra movement speed. Breez has now effectively done his job, in all honesty, by taking that one away. But instead, it looks like he'll be sticking with NeilMah rather than following around Sam for Soccer, who's on this Fenrir. And I think there's some relevance to talk about this, because I think that normally when you see the Fenrir locked in for SK, that's a Neil pick.
Yep.
At that point, they already had the Horus, so you knew that it was going to be going into the jungle. But showing that flexibility here, if Sam plays it really well, could be big for them later, as Belair's in some trouble on the right-hand side, but gets some good peel from Neil to turn it around.
That was a bit spooky from Belair, but he's got double pots ticking. He'll be A-OK. Yeah, I agree that the idea of the Fenrir here is just really solid, and I like the fact that SK is not scared to pick it up, even when they already have the Horus. Now, it's not off to a great start, because Neil does drop the ball on that speed buff secure. His job is to stun Breez so that he can't just dash in, and it may end up costing Sam for Soccer here, because he's still level 1. FrostiaK is going to try and invade these backs, but the squad is coming on their way. Sam for Soccer just dead and low. Okay, ooh, that was scary. FrostiaK nearly dropped it.
He does still find the first blood, though, and that's huge for him. And a lot of that does still come back to Breez, doesn't it? That he kept Sam for Soccer at level 1 for so long by not allowing him to pick up that speed buff. And then that means FrostiaK can come to those back harpies with that level advantage. Even though it ended up being a 2-for-1, FrostiaK was still probably favored to be able to get that kill there, and he is able to pick it up.
100%. I mean, again, that really comes back to Neil. He's just got to land the fracture that stuns Breez and make sure he doesn't dash. So a bad start for Sam, and in FrostiaK getting off to a good start is even more important than Sam getting off to a bad start.
Sure.
I mean, it's just the fact that you actually have FrostiaK with some golden experience on his side. He's on his best god in the entire game. I'm a little surprised that SK wasn't willing to just take the Susano away from him, because, I mean, if he goes back to the Hun Batz, you're ecstatic. I mean,
we'll take another one of those.
100%. So he's going back to his best god. I think this is exactly what Outcold needed to do.
Looks like the pause is resolved as we move back into the game. And again, Outcold already off to just a much better start. I mean, they didn't get a kill at all in game number 1, so it's a tremendous improvement really already, and we'll see if they can keep that momentum going with NeilMah and Sam a bit behind throughout this early game. Now, one thing to note is that Paul really hasn't had to split too much. We'll see if maybe he can stick with Prime, but just as I said, that Prime ticks over, so clearly a bit ahead as Breez tries to go for another buff invade. It looks like he got it?
No, I don't think so. Belair was able to pick up the blue, but Breez nearly ends up dying for it. He has to blink ultimately to stay alive, but still forces Neil and Belair to share the blue. I think they were going to anyways, but the idea is still solid. Breez off to a very good start. He should be pretty close to being able to finish off his boost. Just a little bit of gold short, so he'll stock the inventory instead.
Makes his way back out of there. That was a close one, the tightrope walk there from Breez. That's what playing support's kind of become, though, and I think that the teams that have managed to filter up towards the top, Rival and Renegades and Splice, all have supports who are very, very good at riding that line. So if Breez does want this team to make a deep run, he's got to continue to be able to do plays just like that in this early game. It's just kind of become the state of the game now. FrostiaK, though, looping in behind, might catch NeilMah, and certainly he does. Now 2-0-0, and we talk about that variance with FrostiaK all the time, and this is that high end.
He's rolled the 5 or 6 that FDOT was referencing on the desk. Off to a great start here in game number 2. Gotta keep it up. You definitely can't let your foot off the gas, because SK Gaming still has a really sick team fight with this composition.
Zapman could be in some trouble. NeilMah does come in time for the steal, and there's the Field of Love. Guarantees the kill for Zapman. Spudio has the airstrike, but he's on the wrong side of town. Is able to jump away in the middle of that knockup and is running towards Breez for some backup. But NeilMah's here, so is Paul. The knockup's there, but Neil's going to try and keep up the chase, so Prime turns into the Fenrir, and that turns him around. Zapman loops over to at least make it a 2-for-1.
So at least we get something going for Outcold. You get someone for overextending, but it's NeilMah who is totally fine taking that trade to make sure that they kill Spudio. Spudio's decision to go in with that airstrike, a little bit of a rough one in my mind. The fact that Zapman hits 5, I think they got 1 or 2 of the small creeps on purple.
Right.
And that dinged Zapman to level 5, which meant that he had that Fields of Love available to guarantee the kill on FrostiaK. Because don't forget, even though FrostiaK did get first blood on FrostiaK's back harpies on the right-hand side a little bit ago, he uses purification beads at the same time. And this Cupid ultimate, when you don't have beads as Susano, is a death sentence.
Locks down a lot of different gods. So that Field of Love is going to be a really important cooldown for SK going forward, just in general. And it comes up huge to them there. SK stopped the bleeding by finding these 2 return kills, meaning Outcold only have another couple levels of a lead. But to be fair, I don't know that Outcold should really be ahead in the early game at all with this draft. I mean, Morrigan, you talked about her versatility last time. Susano, a little bit like Batz, can be a bit delayed to get online. Athena, not so bad in that early brawl, but it's Fenrir, Merlin, Horus on the other side. That could be hard to beat in a lot of cases.
It can be, but at the same time, I mean, this SK Gaming team certainly has potential to weather an early storm, even against Outcold's draft that is pretty late game focused, just because SK's team fight is going to be really good centered around Zapman.
Yep.
Zapman joining these fights is going to be so critical for SK Gaming that even if Sam's behind and Paul's behind and Neil's behind, which they all are, by the way, down a level right now, Zapman's ultimate covers a lot of weaknesses of SK's draft and that they're lacking a little bit of AoE. And the big thing is that Fields of Love ultimate is so good against everybody on Outcold, even Prime, where his ability to move around and use that extra movement speed in that Changeling ultimate might get shut down a little bit by that giant AoE cripple. He might have to use a relic just to get out of it.
And it just raises the question, doesn't it? What do you beads when you're in this SK fight? Is it Ragnarok from FrostiaK? Is it
you need that
NeilMah's control as well, like the knockup? Or what is it Zapman's Field of Love, as Spudio has to use the airstrike just to get away? Or when you get hit by Excalibur's Wrath from Belair, you know, and you want to end that early. Everyone on their team, it feels like, demands that you have some form of CC immunity to get away. It's just going to be too many as Zapman gets in range of the Heart Bomb, but not enough for the kill.
They just strip Spudio of all resources. Zapman gets the beads, NeilMah gets the ultimate, NeilMah goes in and gets the beads.
Right.
That's the way you do it. These two have worked really well together all year long, and I'd expect FrostiaK to come on over to that left-hand side. I mean, yes, you might be able to utilize that ultimate from Zapman before the beads are back up, but the ultimate should be up for Spudio. No CDR yet for Zap. He rushes boots with the Hunter's Blessing instead of rushing Transcendence like you see some Cupids do.
Sure.
So he doesn't have that bit of CDR advantage like he will in just a little bit.
What about Sam's path? Where do you think he's going with this start? Because we don't see a ton of Fenrir in the jungle.
Sure.
Even we do see him, it's off at support. So I'm really not even 100% sure what his build path's going to be looking like.
Could be Stone Cutting Sword if he wants to lean into the auto attacks a little bit, but
does
that
have
doesn't
Ninja
seem
Tabai.
super likely to me. I think Masamune is the place that I would go if I were FrostiaK. It's early power, it's a little bit of HP, it's movement speed, and it's a passive that synergizes really well with what Fenrir wants to do, which is get in there and get his hands dirty. I wouldn't be surprised to see it be Masamune, but with the Ninja Tabai, maybe it is Stone Cutting. Maybe that is the direction he wants to go.
Yep. I was thinking maybe so. We have seen people go Ninja Tabai even without plans to go attack-focused at all, because it's just gotten to the point where it's a pretty competitive item with Warrior Tabai and everything else that it gives you. So it gives Sam some flexibility.
It does, and it's so important for Fenrir to get auto attacks on camps quickly so that you can stack up the runes. You want to get those up as often as possible. I could see an argument for going Ninja Tabai on Fenrir even without plans of going anything auto attack besides it.
Certainly can make some sense. Look at this. Sam, experience-wise, is caught back up with FrostiaK. Even a bit of a lead. Zapman playing aggressively, knowing the beads are down here on the left-hand side. I love it.
This is what Zap wants to do to everybody. Dash in, do nothing. Just the immediate, the run up and shield tactic that you see fighting game players use. It's just about establishing dominance, and he's zoned Spudio from a couple creeps right now, and this is a little bit funny because Spudio does have his ultimate up, but he's probably worried that there's someone else.
Blue buff invade attempt here from SK. That's why they're already being aggressive. Prime comes in, and they land the stun on Belair. The taunt as well. A lot of control used, but Belair still standing. Prime turns into the Ragnarok, but they all get out from NeilMah. No way! Right before it lands.
That was so sick. I think that Sam was trying to pick someone up. I wonder if they get TP with the Horus.
Maybe that's the idea. Paul's into trouble here in mid, but FrostiaK doesn't quite have the damage. If Paul had known he could have kept that fire channeling, maybe he could have got the return kill on that one. But that was chaos there on the right-hand side.
That was really nuts. That is an interaction that I want to see now that I haven't seen before. If Fenrir has someone in his mouth, that they get TP'd with the Horus.
I assume so,
I would assume so too. I think that would work. So I think Sam was trying to separate one person from Outcold a really far distance, but a really heads-up use of that To the Skies ultimate. I mean, we said it a lot when Horus first came out. It was going to take people a while to get used to using that ultimate in creative and in strong places. We've seen so much of it these last few days. It's so much fun to watch. This character is just dynamic.
The Horus play has really started to get there now from a lot of our supports. And this was the season, just about more than any other, where it felt like coming in and having a support like Neil or Aurora or PBM and Raffer, these kind of versatile, aggressive supports can really be free to do a lot of different stuff in this current meta. I think that's why the teams that we've seen make it to the top have just this kind of support play around things like this Horus and all these other aggressive picks. It's been almost a renaissance.
It just feels like there's more responsibility on support's plate than there's ever been in the early game. And that's where those creative supports that are used to roaming anyways a little bit more than your more stay-at-home supports who want to sit in lane and just 2v2 you all day long. I think there is still a place for that, and who knows what next season holds. We might see a return to it, and I think that we might see guys like Jeff Hinla, who do want to sit in the lane a little bit more, rise back to some level of success. But this season has, without a doubt, been the season of aggressive supports.
FrostiaK forces the blink there out of NeilMah, and I think he was right that he was in some trouble. And I do think that's been Jeff's problem, to speak on Space Station for a second. More than anything else is that I just don't know that this is his playstyle, this meta that's demanded from these SPL supports. We'll have a chance to see all that further on, as this is trouble now for Frosty. Forced into trying to reposition and use the purification beads. Typhoon comes through as well, and it's Belair that ends up in trouble, and Prime gets the kill credit for it. But into the Ragnarok goes FrostiaK. They're pulling Dimi back for a meal of their own. Defender of Olympus, not quite enough to keep him alive, but Sam has to overcommit, and Neil will fall as well. A 3-for-1 for Outcold.
Just too aggressive there from NeilMah. He goes in right away, and the idea from Belair and Neil is to force the beats from FrostiaK, and they do that well, but then Frosty plays it perfectly after that. He just backs up a little bit, repositions himself, and then ends up being able to push the lead afterwards with that Typhoon, knowing that the enemy's buttons are all down.
Zapman gets aggressive on the red buff, and that Spudio plays aggressive on the back into that, forces Zapman to dash away, to use that ultimate defensively, and ends up being a fair enough trade. No one really uses purification beads or anything there, so Zap's not too punished. But you saw him trying to work his lead with all the action on the right-hand side and didn't quite pan out.
I mean, he's still red, so it could certainly be a lot worse. Zapman now has Transcendence, so he's willing to take every ultimate trade that he can to make sure that he's trying to put Spudio's airstrike on cooldown while his Fields of Love will come back up a little bit more.
Not bad work there from Zapman at all, but that fight and right got out of control for SK Gaming, and it really did look good with that initial lockdown they had on the FrostiaK, but he was able to kind of wiggle his way back out of there, and they got the punish. Ends up being a 3-for-1. I think SK have to keep looking for plays like that. That's the call, but it's got to be a little bit cleaner.
And it is a stone-cutting sword for FrostiaK, so he is going a little bit more auto-attack, and now he's going a little bit more defensive right after the fact. I mean, this is a pretty physical-heavy composition from Outcold. Morrigan, you have to respect her damage because she'll one-shot you later on in the game, but at the same time, she's going to be transforming into physical gods most of the time, so you don't want to build that much magical defense. I think Sam going for probably a breastplate here if I had to guess, just based on this early item choice. maybe he's seeing the crit being worked on by Spudio and is going to go in early Spectral Armor?
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know. I'm curious.
Yeah, this is interesting. I mean, this build path from Sam, it's kind of all up to him. We just really don't see that much jungle Fenrir at all nowadays, so there's not nearly as much of the blueprint as you might normally see, and he'll be able to evaluate it based on Outcold here in this game. But this is such an important bounce back from them because they looked like they couldn't get anything going at all in game number 1. SK shut them out entirely, but Outcold bounced back huge. They're only up about 1,000, so it's not as if they're in firm control here, but I think it's a bit more effectively than 1,000 because really SK should probably be out in front just based on the drafts. So this is not bad from Outcold here at all.
And what's the biggest difference so far? FrostiaK is a character on the map instead of minion number 7 in every wave. I mean, that's kind of the big difference and will be the difference for Outcold. No matter how far they go in this tournament, it's really going to be what FrostiaK shows up.
And remember that butterfly effect, man. I want to give credit to, I don't know how much credit to Breez or maybe a mistake from Neil, but FrostiaK's been ahead of Sam since then, since the beginning of the game.
It was important.
And it is huge. I mean, you get that first kill on him because of that exact play, and that's how you end up ahead, and there is that sort of ongoing, trickle-down effect from that initial play. So, I mean, yes, this looks a lot better from Outcold, but I wondered, in this meta, how much of it does come down to, a bit of a misplay from Neil in the early game.
I think that's a fair assessment. That really did change the course of this game pretty heavily. But that being said, I mean, Sam not that far behind, about a level and a half right now, which is certainly relevant, but he's hit level 12. That's the biggest gap.
They don't lose the game off that play. No way.
No. Well, they might, because honestly, they might, because FrostiaK, if you shut him down early again,
right,
the game's free.
Yeah.
The fact that FrostiaK is able to get that first kill, the first blood on the back harpies, that makes it so he's able to put pressure on the map and just gains him a lot of confidence, and he's playing with it.
Maybe so. I'm certainly amenable to that explanation, as Gold Fear being started by Outcold with a little less than a 2,000 gold advantage, but they won't commit to this one just yet with SK nearby. It looks like that was more of a, let's see if that home security system's working or not, and when it is, they dipped back out.
You've been hanging out with FDOT too much, man. Not everything has to be a crime reference.
True.
There's other ways that you can do it, but it's fine. We can move on. It does mean that Outcold gained some degree of information that they know SK has a normal ward on Gold Fury because they've got Oracle vision but no Sentry vision on that objective. So now, when Breez goes back right here, he can pick up a Sentry and know he's going to get at least a little bit of return on the investment by heading straight towards Gold with it.
So often we see Jing Wei's build Rage in this slot as that third item, their first crit item. It scales so well for you later on because you're able to get it stacked up so easily. But Spudio going the Wind Demon here instead this time. You're okay with the Wind Demon choice in this slot?
Yeah, I think it's actually pretty solid against a team that's going to be a little bit hard to kite usually. This gives you some extra movement speed, and that's going to be important against running away from FrostiaK and Ragnarok. It might get you out of Fields of Love where it might normally not. You might normally have to use beads or your ultimate. Belair is a character that is hard to run away from. Getting that extra movement speed is going to help. I think that Wind Demon is probably a little bit underpurchased.
Sure.
Maybe a little bit too early for Spudio, but it's one of those items that feels so good once you complete it that you like to have it.
That's a blink in from Breez and gets the beads out from Paul in the middle lane. That's a great trade for this Athena because Paul's going to be on notice. In fact, FrostiaK comes to collect right away, but he might have bit off a little bit more than he could chew. The Fenrir Olympus is there, but he's been locked down by FrostiaK. And then Breez, oh no, he took the express train right to the L. My man is back in base. Paul shuts him down.
FrostiaK tries to capitalize and make a play, but Paul just outplays him mechanically. Puts himself in too good of a position, dumps as much damage as he can, and SK Gaming is right there and ready to capitalize. And just like that, the lead for Outcold falters.
Man, could an SK2-0 could easily be written with a sentence that starts with that play, man. I mean, that's huge for them. And Breez does everything right there. It's just so unfortunate. The blink in taunt gets the beads from Paul. That's exactly the trade that you're comfortable with making every single time. And FrostiaK goes in to try and capitalize on it, but SK have the response. It's not just Gold Fury. It's not just the 2-for-0. They're going to get Pyromancer off that too. This is what a top-end team will do, man. One small bit of weakness, and they'll take so much.
Good split up by Belair, Neil, and Paul, realizing Dimi is local to the neighborhood. Give up the blue buff as well. It's just not worth fighting over when you've just got a whole bunch of gold. after that last engagement. Now Sam has finished off what is a breastplate of balance.
Well, this could be a big play, though, from Prime, as Belair is low, and the Ragnarok can bring him right back towards Dimi, who has the ultimate. Breez here, too. Belair should be dead, and certainly is. Prime is the one that gets the kill credit off a nice play.
Just a bad decision by Belair to use that extra ultimate that Excalibur's Wrath. It's the only CC immunity Arthur has. Why use it that early?
Spudio has to use the airstrike to get away here on the left-hand side from the pressure from Sam for Soccer. And we were talking about this Wind Demon earlier on. If you feel like you're going to have to be trading a little bit more often, or maybe even peeling for yourself to some extent with your autos, try and get away, then I do think Wind Demon's probably better early on in the spot than Rage. Rage feels a little bit more like if you think you're going to be following up a lot of setup. But they do also have this Athena, so I mean, there is going to be the setup there. It's curious. I do think in most cases, Rage is just probably the play in that slot.
Are you going for more crit later on? If you're just trying to get one crit item, then Rage is usually better because it means that you're getting more consistent crits. If you're going Deathbringer and Rage, you want all the crits all the time, but this way you still boost up your attack speed and your movement speed, and you can end up getting more crit items down the line. I think Wind Demon's probably fine. Rage is also fine in that slot. It's kind of just a playstyle thing. It seems like Spudio really values that extra attack speed and movement speed.
Executioner right there to follow it off, too. So that's about as good as you're going to get at this point in the game here right now for a Jing Wei. She should certainly be able to trade. Actually, the highest farm in the game. And I mentioned about coming to collect earlier on. It might be time to collect on Spudio's nice laning phase he's had here so far. He's going to start being a bit more of a factor now that we're approaching that 20-minute mark. We're into that mid-game beyond the laning phase. They need Spudio to start, showing up.
And that's because he's running out of XP room. I mean, eventually he's not going to have an XP lead. Right now he's got a 6-level lead on NeilMah. Get in there, man. You got to use it.
Breez takes some damage here in mid, but nothing crazy. Dimi was right there to back him up anyway, so SK weren't going to commit. Outcold, after making that play on Belair and, kind of coming back into this a little bit, SK had tied it up, but I would say Outcold have now gotten back to at least somewhat of a lead. Nothing, too crazy or anything. But I'm wondering which team is going to be the one that starts to be the actor from here on. Outcold had a lead when they maybe shouldn't have earlier, but now they're getting to the point with Spudio showing up where they could be the ones in the driver's seat.
Absolutely. Their team fight is really solid, but at the same time, that means that Zapman's going to be here. That Fields of Love could be problematic. No sprint for Breez, that's surprising.
NeilMah goes in first. Sam is lurking around the corner. They bring Breez right back. The frenzy has been popped. FrostiaK gets the first kill on the Zapman. Neil makes it back out too, and suddenly Belair's here in the fray. It's a 1-for-1, but Belair gets popped, and so does Sam. Big crits coming out from Spudio to push SK back.
You were asking for it, and Spudio delivers. That's a lot of investment into killing just Breez, and I like Outcold not being scared to just keep on pushing. You need to be willing to be aggressive here, because in 20 seconds, Breez can join up with you anyways. He didn't use his ultimate.
Outcold grab that tier 1 tower, but there's no Gold Fury or Pyromancer to go grab off the back of that, so it's not perhaps the typical reward you might expect on the back end of a decent fight. But you're right, SK, it didn't feel a bit forced, all that, just try and grab Breez, and Belair, for whatever reason, not quite as tanky as you might have expected. He was getting shredded in that fight as well. A curious fight there from SK.
And now he's building into magical defense, which isn't going to help him a whole lot against what Spudio's putting out. I agree that he needs some magic defense because he's got literal none in the build up until this point.
Right.
And Genji's is usually the call for King Arthur because it makes it so that you always have buttons to press in team fights between the CDR it has on it and the proc that you get. But then after that, I mean, he's going to want Mantle, but he needs something else that's a little bit more physical heavy, I think.
Yeah, and clearly the squad recognizes that physical damage is the problem. I mean, even Paul has a breastplate as his 4th item, which we sometimes do see these mid-mages flex into with all that CDR and mana available there to it. So clearly the physical damage is the problem. Hopefully Belair, sooner rather than later, can get a little bit more to help him stand up against Spudio.
But no sovereignty for NeilMah, so that doesn't help out too much. I mean, he's going to be going into what's probably a Spirit Robe or a Mantle from this point, and that's because he understands his gold income is going to take so long to get his next item that you want to make it the most impactful one you can have.
Oni Fury started up here by Outcold. NeilMah has already dashed in aggressively. That's his Magai's Cloak propped as well. Sam for Soccer, though, has found his way to Dimi. The flames are there from Paul. Defender of Olympus buys him time, but but it just means that Breez gets delivered all by himself. That's a huge stun to buy NeilMah some time to try and retreat, but Outcold on a full-on aggressive Prime finds Paul. Prime finds a triple kill as NeilMah falls as well, but FrostiaK finds at least one more to answer back. FrostiaK ends up being sent back to the grave. That makes it 3 for 2.
What a fight from FrostiaK. He created so much space and did so much damage in that engagement. I know Prime's the one who gets to clean up, but FrostiaK really does deserve that credit. He played that really well.
Prime looking for a stun here on the Belair, who's trying to fight up against 3. They've already gotten the tier 2 tower. It's fine to look for some damage, but don't go too far forward here in that last fight. But FrostiaK's the one that you said that really opened up that space in that last fight.
I mean, that's exactly where you want to take fights as Susano. You want to be able to just get around the side and kind of loop around red, a typhoon that comes through. I mean, it's just exactly what you're looking for, and FrostiaK is so comfortable on this character. It's night and day between his Susano and just about every other pick he has, in my mind. Dimi gets isolated and caught out. He shouldn't have been where he was. But at the same time, I mean, it's another fight where SK Gaming are just thinking, okay, we'll just dump everything into a frontliner and we'll win the fight afterwards.
It's not fast enough, this combo. I don't.
Yeah. I mean, now you've got Divine Ruin for Paul, so that'll help. But it's still a little bit sketchy in my mind. No Obsidian Shard for Paul either. If the whole plan is kill the front line, why don't we have Obsidian Shard?
Yeah. I mean, it just doesn't quite feel quick enough. And it's interesting, this feels almost reminiscent of what we saw Splice doing back towards Worlds of Season 5. And SK, I suppose, would be rather familiar with how well that run went for Splice. So they're trying a similar strategy here where you use this Fenrir and you do intentionally target the tank, even into the later stages of the game, because the trade is supposed to be so clean for you, so quick, that it ends up being favorable, even though it is a heavy commitment. But SK haven't gotten to that point yet. It is taking too long, with that Defender of Olympus especially, to kill whoever the tank is.
This, Outcold Gaming immediately pull this. Now they've got Oni Waves pushing down that left-hand side and mid. They're forcing SK to make a choice.
Fire Giant's already well below half. Breez regroups. That's the girdle popped. They're all in, and they've gotten the objective, but can they make it out? Beach from FrostiaK negates the ultimate from FrostiaK. Dimi goes back in and forces Zapman to drop the Fields of Love, and that's not the optimal one that he was looking for. A 3-man taunt from Breez, but it's really only airstrike there is the follow-up.
Not a whole lot, but that still puts Spudio in position. Paul in trouble, stunned, but Prime is taking a lot of damage.
Breez goes back in one more time for what would have been a sick taunt, but Belair was right there to interrupt it, but Dimi undeterred goes back in for one more. Another sick taunt from Breez, and Spudio has the big time crits to follow up. That's 2-0 for Outcold. Paul in some trouble now in the back lane too. FrostiaK pulls him back in. NeilMah now isolated.
NeilMah gonna fall as well.
Another.
A double kill for FrostiaK. That's game.
Yeah, it should be.
Finch, I mean, only FrostiaK here, and his ultimate isn't coming up soon enough. I think SK Gaming should just look at one pick in particular, and that's the Susano for FrostiaK.
Yeah, maybe this Morrigan for Prime as well. He had a pretty good game, but you're right, man. FrostiaK, a night and day difference. They complete the DS side. FrostiaK improves to 7-3-5, and Outcold, after a trouncing in game number 1, bounced back in a big way. We got a game 3.
Man, this is kind of the perfect matchup for these two teams, isn't it? Because they both have Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde moments. I mean, we saw the perfect nature of SK when they play so cleanly and they play that early game really well, and they get off to these great starts and they completely blank you. 19-0 in game number 1. And you see the dark side of the moon for FrostiaK and Outcold, where it's this really inconsistent team that just kind of gets run over at times. And then you see what they look like flipped. It's the SK where they feel a little bit too passive and they fall a little bit too far behind. And a lot of it does come down to that level 1 speed invade for me. But at the same time, you have to give a lot of credit to Outcold and FrostiaK and his ability to turn it around after an abysmal performance in game 1.
It's not hard, I think, to come into this game dejected after what happened in game number 1, but Outcold overcame that, bounced back in a huge way in game number 2. The question is, though, can they replicate that again in game number 3? Not too far off now before we find out.
Welcome back here, folks. Teams battling it out to find themselves on the SMITE World Championship stage. Splice found themselves on that stage last year and took it home, and you can celebrate last year's victors by grabbing yourself the Splice Jormungandr skin. HRX 2019 digital loot pack is 1,500 gems. A little bit more than 1,500 gems on the line here as Outcold bring us to a game number 3, Anatoly. This one was unexpected, I think, but that said, PrettyPriMe popping off and going nuts, that's anything but unheard of.
Outcold Gaming doing a great job surviving that early game. The pressure from Sanford Soccer's Fenrir was heavily thwarted out. Once the team fight started rolling around, PrettyPriMe transforming into the Susano from FrostiaK. So surviving round 1 of the Typhoon was SK Gaming, couldn't survive round 2 of that same ability.
Big deal here for FrostiaK. Again, you know, I mentioned it, the turn of phrase, the dice roll. FrostiaK hit it this time. 7 kills and just a few deaths. He was a big part of what allowed this to happen, and perhaps most importantly, most impressively, how distinctly different it was from game number 1. Game number 1, FrostiaK was a liability, arguably the reason this team got trounced. Game number 2, it's the other side for him. First blood, just like that.
Yeah, he definitely made his presence felt early. Surprised that SK Gaming were trying to be this aggressive when Sam was just so low health category-wise and level 1 against FrostiaK's level 2 Susano.
Just trying to stay in that aggressive mindset. I mean, they had picked, they being SK, an early game composition. They had won last game and you know, record-setting time. This was certainly the game that you go into guns blazing. But Outcold just showed up and put the stop down. And again, whether it was PrettyPriMe or FrostiaK, these guys made it happen. I love Prime's ability to switch between different characters. Very potent, the Morrigan player.
Definitely was very potent. And I think that if I'm SK Gaming, I'm looking at what OCG did correctly that last game, and not only the Morrigan, but also the Susano. Game number 1, they banned away the Susano. Game number 2, they decided to shift things up a little bit because they were the second pick. They banned away the normal Persephone and Isis, but then they took away Breez's Circuit instead of the Susano for FrostiaK.
That might be a different story this time around, watching what FrostiaK was able to accomplish. 14 kills between him and his mid laner. Fantastic stuff. PrettyPriMe making use of the Susano there as well. You see him just cutting down 2 different players with the same damn ability. And here's Frosty on the flank.
This is the confidence right here to be able to make the play on the flank and then also dive into the Phoenix to end this game basically off of the back of that flank. Otherwise, it would have been a 3-on-5 defense. I think that OCG would have still gotten the Phoenix, but they might not have ended the game without those 2 picks from FrostiaK.
Frosty, a longtime SMITE player. I think everybody recognizes Dimi and PrettyPriMe's name, but FrostiaK's been involved just as long as those guys. He's just had some ups and downs, quite literally, playing up in the Pro League, then down in the minor league, here and there. Success, very similar to his individual game success. It kind of feels like a dice roll, but the upside, we just witnessed it.
Oh, yeah.
Could literally win the set if he plays like that again.
OCG drafted a late game composition. They got to the late game that they needed to. They heavily punished the early game aggression out of SK. Now, if I'm SK Gaming, I'm thinking back to the draft. I'm like, do we draft another early game composition and look for that early aggression, or do we try to play more safe and standard, similar to the game number 1 fashion?
I think it's kind of in between. I think that this is a team that SK Gaming should go into confidently against, but not underestimate them. Letting FrostiaK play Susano might have been an overestimation of SK's own abilities to kind of topple the opposition. I think this time around we pay attention to the Susano choice as we jump into picks and bans for game number 3. I think it is going to be front and center what FrostiaK is allowed to be playing.
Well, so far, I think both order sides have won in this best-of-3 set, and SK Gaming, after that loss, electing for that first pick, wanting to make sure that they have that throwaway ban and then can still first pick whatever they want in game number 1. They did first pick the Thor, and Outcold Gaming should be aware of this.
Susano, one of the first bans here for SK Gaming. Actually, Circuit. Breez has shown himself to be a different level of player on that Circuit support, so ban that out. FrostiaK has proven to be a different level of player on that Susano jungle, so ban that out. And now SK Gaming, one more ban on the table. Amaterasu is just Amaterasu.
Smart ban, because Persephone and Isis is still available. OCG have a very difficult decision of which one do we give up, or do we let both go through, take one that wasn't selected, and that seems to be the option.
Achilles banned here. SK Gaming trying to figure out if they want the Isis or the Persephone. Very unlikely that a different character gets selected here.
They might actually not pick either. Okay, I was going to say they wouldn't pick either because OCG picking up Persephone and Isis a little unlikely, but instead making sure that they guarantee themselves to pick that they really want. This means that SK Gaming have an idea of how to counter the Isis if it was selected, and if it is selected, I'm expecting maybe a Kabrakan for FrostiaK.
Persephone, an interesting character, almost auto-banned here, so to speak, as Isis, the other character. 100% ban rate will be selected across the way. The quick and dirty about Persephone, she's fantastic in the laning phase and fantastic when able to plant herself, no pun intended, down. Basically, she puts a bunch of items on the ground, and depending on how long they've stood there, they deal damage to those that attack her. Long-range ultimate, good control, and it's up to Outcold to avoid that. Medusa and Xing also some strong control.
There definitely will be with that Whirlwind of Rage and Steel. I think this Medusa will be played by Paul in the mid lane, trying to get control to transition into some red buff invades, maybe some purple buff invades as well. Hard to really deal with King Arthur in the soul lane to get any sort of pressure. Could easily see an Osiris potentially out of Belair to deal with that because of the Judgment Tether to mitigate the damage out of Isis and the anti-healing from Lord of the Afterlife.
Most of the time I would agree, but with Medusa being mid lane, Persephone, though, plays fantastically in the mid lane. Everything is, you're always fighting in that 3v3, and God help you if you try to dive Persephone in lane.
I agree.
With her garden set up. So I think we will see a coin flip as to who winds up playing Persephone and Medusa. Second round bans here. Outcold Gaming saying no to Tier and Set, and SK banning out the Chronos and the Jing Wei. So Outcold, Horus, Isis, King Arthur, looking for a long lane carry most likely, and a jungler.
Yeah, Spudio on the Jing Wei last game was super safe, hard to really deal with. Even though Zapman had lane pressure, was able to zone Spudio away from a couple of waves. Once Spudio came online with his explosive bolts, he was definitely hard to deal with. Once there was an overcommitment onto Breez's Athena, Spudio Jing Wei punishing them in the late game.
Osiris being thought about here for SK, as they do need a solo laner. Osiris, a nice choice. Tether, powerful against King Arthur. Still on the clock. A jungler could also be chosen here. Well, they got to take both, right? And so Camazotz will come up, likely to be in the jungle, although, of course, that sustain has enabled him to play solo lane in the past. And with Batz locked in, it looks like it will be a Camazotz for Belair, who is one of the premier Camazotz solo players, to be honest with you.
Very interesting to see that pick because we don't see this very often. It's good sustain for the poke damage that King Arthur is trying to provide. You don't have to max out your one for lane clear because you have your AoE cleave basic attacks. Right. So you could technically trade out with King Arthur before the Gladiator Shield. That could be a thing.
That was the first thought process. When King Arthur came onto the board, he was obviously dominant. One, he needed to be brought down a little bit by the balance team. But also, players needed to learn how to play against him. There's a lot of different choices. A lot of players went to the RDO to just go cripple field and see if that would stop him. Then was the attempt to out-sustain, and Camazotz was the go-to answer to King Arthur for a long time before we saw some of the other options come out as well. But the first true counter was Camazotz, or at least the first universally accepted counter was the Camazotz. So SK turning back the clock here and putting the Batman in the hands of Belair and Batz, the setup god in the jungle. Hachiman will be the hunter of choice here for Outcold Gaming, as OCG bring a rather traditional setup here to the battlefield in their elimination game.
But if it's not the Jing Wei to play safe, it's got to be the Hachiman. You have a lot of MP5, so you never have to back to base if you're out of mana. You just got to be hitting a couple of minions. The mounted archery covers so much distance to get back under your tower. It's hard to gank Spudio, I think, in this game. So if I'm FrostiaK, I'm not really looking at the long lane. I'm looking at the Isis in mid, maybe also Rav in there on FrostiaK.
There's a lot to look at here for sure, Anatoly. Let's zoom out and take a look at what the goals here for each composition. Outcold Gaming, Horus, Isis. That's a ton of lockdown potential. King Arthur, Raven, they can die very well.
Sure.
Where are you looking at? Is Outcold Gaming looking for these extended team fights with Isis? Well, we'll ask the players as we jump into game number 3, SK versus Outcold. John Finch, bring us the action.
After game number 1, it didn't look like we'd be here, Tom, if I'm being honest. It looked like SK were going to walk over Outcold. But Outcold bounced back in game number 2. A nice play by Breez. He steals the speed buff early. FrostiaK gets up to a great start. Prime is on the Morrigan and is carrying alongside FrostiaK. And now here we are, man. SK have got to take care of business now, or SPL could go down 0-3.
That's crazy to think about. But I've got good news for you, Finch, if you're an SPL/SK Gaming fan. Paul has Persephone.
Oh, that's good.
FrostiaK does not have Susano.
That's not as good.
Do you need me here this game or what?
No, I think that I'll just, I can handle it for the rest. You don't need much more in-depth analysis.
Like, I've gotten everything, right? I think that's all I have on my list here.
Now, on the opposite side, I mean, they do have to give up this Isis to make that happen. Prime is one of the standout players here for Outcold. He has a ton of potential, I think, to hard carry a game with this Isis. Breez on the Horus, which he's been playing well too up until now. Dimi on King Arthur. I mean, we kind of have to see, because SK don't have a typical meta draft right now. Belair's on Camazotz solo as if it's Season 5 right now, and Zapman took Medusa early on in the draft. Well, it still stands to be shown here if they can execute it.
Yeah, but here's what my notes say. Paul has Persephone and FrostiaK doesn't have Susano.
Yeah.
I mean, I really think it's that important.
Sure.
For those two in particular. I mean, FrostiaK, one of the best Susano players ever. And then Paul, who I think has had one either the best or the second best Persephone. We've seen so little of it.
Sure.
But just based on the way that we've seen it, it's either him or her.
FrostiaK taking a lot of damage from FrostiaK. Shades of game 1 as it's 2 up against 1. Sam jukes around trying to buy some time, but first blood for FrostiaK. And Outcold looks so much better when FrostiaK has good starts. Could this be it for them to take down another SPL squad?
Oh, Paul in trouble. Bees are there, but he's dead as well. This is exactly what Outcold need. A 3-for-0 less than 2 minutes in. After SK wins game 1, 19-0.
Wow.
They're off to a real bad start here in game number 3.
Wow, I mean, Ice is so good in the 3v3, man. I don't know. I don't think I'll ever be persuaded otherwise, man. You just love having her here in these fights, and she's able to help out a lot. FrostiaK works Sam for soccer. Why was he so far behind in experience in that fight?
It's because FrostiaK's able to start at his speed, because NeilMah's defending speed instead of invading. Breez is invading. It forces Sam to start at red, which means that he's like level 1. And FrostiaK, I think Sam may have started left side mids. He was looking to start an enemy red buff, but Paul lost pressure, which really shouldn't happen that often as Persephone. I don't know if Paul messed up his plants, but I feel like Persephone level 1 should be absolutely nuts. Paul ends up poking out Prime a little bit, but Prime gets the better end of clear. Maybe this is a situation where Isis just clears better than every other mage at level 1, and so Paul, used to having pressure in that setup, did not in that moment.
It ends up hurting SK pretty catastrophically. I mean, that's about the worst way that this start could go for this team. I mean, it's all in this 3v3. A death for each of them. 2 kills for FrostiaK and another for Prime, and Breez able to scoop a couple of assists for himself as well. I mean, it's going to be a problem. I mean, Belair and Zapman perfectly capable on these picks of coming over and being a big help for them later on. But if the 3v3 keeps going like this, it just might not matter.
This is just the worst case scenario, because FrostiaK has 2 kills and Prime has 1. So those two get off to such a good lead. You're really looking for Zapman to pick it up the slack. Same can be said for Belair, but the fact that Sam doesn't have the Thor means it's harder for him to camp that right-hand side. He's on Batz this time around, which does camp Soul-Laters pretty well, but so did Fenrir, and Sam wasn't able to make that work. This is a concerning start for SK Gaming. And if I'm Outcold now, I just want to take every fight I can around my 3v3 in mid, which is scary because then you're bringing the fight to Paul's Persephone, which is not where you want to be fighting most of the time. My advice coming into this game would have been fight the side lanes so you don't have to worry about Paul's Persephone. When you 3-for-0 them to start off the game, then that changes things.
and both of these teams have blinks on their jungles and support, so both teams are looking to try and play aggressive. It's just that Outcold have a better claim to that now at this point with their draft. That is the Bancross finisher, Paul. This is a big item for these Persephones. They're able to get this item finished off early on. But on the other side, Prime has the Cursed Orb and the Shoes of Focus, this new meta build, this start for these mid-mages, also very powerful and already level 5. Every time I'm seeing something positive for SK, Outcold have the same thing, if not better.
I mean, Prime is just so strong right now. That's what makes this build so strong, is that you're 4 minutes in. That's been accelerated, of course, because of the way the game started, but you just get to this point so quickly where you feel really hard to fight against. And Paul's going to do a lot of damage at this point, but Prime's going to do a lot of damage and have CDR and have mobility, whereas Paul really just has the damage part.
Breez and Frosty clearing mid-Harpies, but still not quite ready to pull any triggers. I mean, I imagine you want PrettyPriMe to be a part of just about everything you want to happen in this 3v3 or in the middle lane. So I don't hold anything against them for slowing down. But they are giving a chance for SK to get these ultimates online. I thought there might be, you know, some writing on the wall about another quick initiation when you have some ultimates, and SK might not yet. But instead, Outcold playing it a bit slower over these next couple of minute and a half since that explosive start. And SK not fully caught up, but crossing that threshold.
I mean, Sam's only about 600-700 gold down right now. That's a lot at 5 minutes,
sure.
But it's you're on the same item tier at this point, which is the
it's those
important
thresholds,
part.
yeah.
Exactly. So could be worse. What a play from Sam! Sets up Breez. He's gonna go down for free.
Yeah, that's gonna be the grasp of death from Paul. They've got Prime as well. Zapman there on a big time rotation, and SK might have just dragged themselves right back in it. And I mean, you already said it. Sam for Soccer could easily be the best player in this whole pool that's here this weekend. And what a big play with that Fear No Evil.
That was so nasty, man. I mean, the teleport in gets the oracles. By the way, got to secure the farm first, of course. But then a perfect Fear No Evil. Paul's ready to pull the trigger on that ultimate. And then NeilMah follows up perfectly as well. Prime had to use his beads in response to the Fear No Evil, so NeilMah's Xing Chen is ready to capitalize. This draft from SK, jokes aside about Paul and Persephone and FrostiaK not on Susano,
sure.
I think putting NeilMah on the Xing Chen, he looks a lot better than the Horus. I mean, the Horus play wasn't bad from Neil by any stretch. I thought he played pretty well, but his Xing Chen game 1 was just unstoppable, it felt like. I like him on these sorts of picks.
And what he did was rotate really well. I wonder if that's why he's got these Traveler shoes picked up, to give him some of that extra movement speed. Remember, he was like 1-0-8 in 10 minutes, and those fights were spread out. To have only missed 1 kill was nuts. So maybe that's what they're kind of leaning into here, is setting up Neil to be that active support who's involved in fights all over the map and constantly tilting the scales in SK's favor.
Paul is getting closer to the boots, so that's going to be a pretty big power spike for him. PrettyPriMe, it's going to take him a while. That's the one downside of this build, is that it takes you a while. Once you hit that Cursed Orb, it's a lot of gold to get up to the full Doom Orb, and so you slow down a little bit right now, and this is going to be a moment where Paul can catch up a little bit. Plus the fact that he gets a kill and an assist in that time.
I just can't believe Outcold have sat on their hands after that start. I mean, I'm not saying they have to, like, you know, force it down mid or anything, but trying to force some fights. Instead, they let SK keep passing these thresholds where their power spikes were, and now SK are right back in it. I don't know that you really have that same credence, you know, in these early fights that they did back after that 3-0.
I completely agree with you. I mean, first red buff of the entire game. You 3-for-0 them, and your 3v3 is Raven, Isis, Horus. So what are we doing on the next red buff? Letting them have it.
Yeah.
I mean, that makes no sense whatsoever. I completely agree. You've got to be there. It is really, I think, a credit to Zap, because he's had pressure in this left-hand side.
Yes.
And so that dissuades you heavily from going for red buff invades, because even with a lead, a 4v3 is usually not going to be in your favor.
Well, it happened the other way around, right? Zapman was able to rotate to the back end of the fight that SK started up by the Chaos side red buff, so that's fair. Maybe that's part of the calculus for Outcold, is that even with that stronger 3v3, you have to worry about Zap potentially rotating back in. And we really haven't even talked yet about the impact these Summoners are going to have when they rotate over. I mean, if Belair is going to have to be diving this Isis, I imagine, for him to match King Arthur's value in these fights, I mean, without much contest, you just rather have a King Arthur.
Yes. That being said, as a mid laner, I don't want to fight against either of these because they're unpeelable damage is kind of the way I think about both of these gods. Camazotz is there to make sure PrettyPriMe Spirit Balls are all aimed at him. Every single silence has got to be aimed at Belair. He's got to use Circle of Protection to save his own life. I mean, that is what you're looking to force PrettyPriMe to do in these team fights. And Belair is a premier Camazotz in the entire world. He really understands this pick very well.
Certainly was able to play it really well. There was a time where Camazotz was thought of as that answer to King Arthur to match the sustain as Paul solos Prime in the middle lane. No one else is around.
Yeah, that's not what you're looking for if you're out cold. Now this is better. Sam for soccer in a bad spot.
Yeah, he's low, and this Horus should be able to cut off his escape path, force him back. Dimi gets the kill to make it 1-for-1, but Paul able to find a big play on Prime. That's the kind of thing you were expecting in this matchup, where Prime hasn't quite looked like himself and Paul is such a bully. More of those kinds of plays. That's exactly what SK ordered.
And you know that Prime, I mean, you hear him talk about it on his stream and that kind of stuff. You know this is a team in Outcold that certainly does practice, but not as much as they would like. It's, you know, they're in the minor league. It's not the same level of dedication.
Spudio has to use the beats. He had the ultimate forced out last time. NeilMah rotated in with the blink. And that, my friends, is how you follow up off that first level gank that Neil did. Just perfect.
The way that Neil and Sam work together, man, it's so much fun. They really understand how to make opposing ADC's lives completely unfun for them at all times, it feels like.
A nice play on that left-hand side. Looks like we might have another skirmish here as FrostiaK rotates in, finds the route onto Neil. Overhead kick doesn't get much, and Breez does not have the blink, so that'll likely be the end of this unless Zapman wants some more. If we can, let's go back and take a look at that kill that Paul gets onto Prime and how that solo kill ends up happening in the middle lane.
What I was saying was, you know that this is a team that doesn't get as much practice as SPL teams, and maybe this is just a pick that Prime isn't used to. I mean, that is just Paul knowing all of his damage. That was actually so sick. He pops the flower, and he knows there's going to be travel time, and Prime's going to be out of range if he lets him get away. So he actually throws out the ultimate to lock Prime in place so that his plant can get up there and chomp him. That's character knowledge from Paul. I mean, he's got a rank 10 Persephone, plays it all the time in duel. You know he knows his character inside and out.
Dude, I thought he must have been way out of position, or he must have been poked in the jungle or something. He was full HP when that fight started. Paul chunks at this point on that Persephone.
Yep.
And that was the full rotation of skills, obviously, against a squishy, so you don't want to overreact or anything, but clearly when Paul is on point, he can take down just about anyone right now.
I mean, he had just hit a big power spike in Pen Boots, so that's a big level, a big difference in the amount of damage he's doing compared to what Prime probably thought. And I talk about a lot that Persephone might be the hardest character. Hold that thought. Breez goes for the initiation.
Has already been locked down. He pays for it, does not even get the ultimate off. FrostiaK has to keep on the retreat path, but Neil is looking for Prime. Whirlwind gets pulled and brings him back into the Petrify. Paul shuts down FrostiaK as well. That's 3-for-0, right to the goal.
PrettyPriMe like, hey guys, I need help. FrostiaK, I got you, bro, right on time. And NeilMah just gifted 2 kills over to Zapman with perfect positioning. SK Gaming weathering the storm of a horrendous, catastrophic early start.
Yeah.
And now they're in a commanding position.
That's 2 games in a row, really, where they've had bad starts that did not go the way they wanted. But this time, they bounced back in a much bigger fashion. And I wonder how much of it is that Susano ban. You know, FrostiaK didn't have nearly as big a lead in Game 2, but pushed it really, really well. In Game 3, with that big lead, it felt like they weren't quite sure where to go and how to pressure it. I wonder if taking the Susano away has limited some of that, ability to recognize where your windows are.
No doubt it has. He looks like a different player on that pick. I mean, we'll say it until the end of time. It feels like.
Sure.
That is a huge factor for him, and I think that Paul's Persephone might pretty soon be on that same level of you just gotta take it away all the time. I mean, as I was saying before that sort of engagement started by Gold Fury, I say a lot that I think Persephone is the hardest character to play optimally right now because she is so. The way her 2 works is so deep. There's so many different layers to it, and how you want to interact with it with your 3, use your 1 to plant the skull. I mean, all this extra stuff. At the end of the day, fire off your ultimate, kill a frontliner is pretty simple. Anybody can do that. But it also means that it's hard for other players to know exactly what you're going to be able to put out at all times, and I think that unfamiliarity against this character has certainly played a factor.
Yeah, a bit surprising this one was allowed through for someone of Paul's caliber, as it's been punished. Fear No Evil forced out from Sam after FrostiaK's aggression. As the overhead kick down too, but he still doesn't get picked up by the Whirlwind of Rage and Steel. Gets some backup coming in for Breez, but Belair takes to the sky himself with this bat of the hell, but Neil needs some backup. It does end up being jungle for support, still favoring SK.
Paul's on the way, and PrettyPriMe low. Look at Belair, 1v3. He might just find him, and he will. It's a double for Belair.
And Dimi's now low as well. Knock up coming through, but Belair improves to the triple kill, taking down Dimi. And SK Gaming right back up on that horseman and ready to ride.
Woo!
They've been looking great here in Game 3.
Nearly found Breez, too. He was looking for the quadra. I mean, I don't get it. I don't know how he does it on this pick. I feel like I watched that play, and I'm like, oh, Camazotz solo busted. Let me go try some of this. And then I get one shot. Belair gets through that whole team fight, doesn't take a lick of damage, and kills everybody. Paul comes in and supports with some good damage of his own, but Belair looking good on the Camazotz.
And I want to give a ton of credit to Zap, not in that fight in particular, but a big reason why they were able to overcome that horrendous start that they had, because Zap has had pressure over Spudio basically all game. He's been kind of giving him the hands with this Medusa, and he's been able to rotate over towards these buffs to defend them, to turn the fight with a little bit extra damage, to be in position for a two-man petrify off NeilMah's Whirlwind of Rage and Steel. I think that part of this, that Spudio can't quite keep up with Zapman in lane, has been another big factor to how they turn this one around.
And that's a lot of credit to Neil at the same time, that he
made
does a
some
really good
rotation.
job of pressuring out opposing ADCs and setting Zapman up for that success. But Zap just doesn't make a whole lot of mistakes at this point in his career. He really feels like he's cleaned up his play a whole lot this year, and is really understanding of when and where he can play aggressively. And he really doesn't give up too much in that lane these days.
SK up about 6,000 gold or so, ready to hit the bank and see if they can add a little bit more. That's about 500 for the squad, but I doubt that'll satisfy them. They're looking for the tier 2 tower as well. And Outcold, considering at least a soft defense on this one, 6,000, 7,000, that's that tough mark where it's hard to call, but it looks like they want to go in. Dimi starts the fight off, has Breez right there, but Grasp of Death is right in the middle of everyone. NeilMah brings back the whole squad, though, for a double kill. Zapman working together with Paul, take them both down. Now FrostiaK left on an island, and in comes the Fear No Evil. They go the whole fight without that one to dissect FrostiaK even further, make that 3.
No carries have beads either for Outcold Gaming. Belair blinks
done.
right past the Spirit Ball. Hey, Prime, are you having fun yet? Another kill.
Nice party down reference.
I mean, this is just SK Gaming dissecting Outcold.
Yeah, let's grab this tier 2 tower, fam, and why not the Phoenix as well? Just leaving Spudio and Breez, who's just respawned up, to try and defend. So this Phoenix should belong to SK, but that was Outcold taking a risky fight outside the tier 2, feeling like they weren't going to get a better one. Is that the right call? Should they wait for Phoenixes?
I think you have to wait there, and really, that fight goes so poorly because Outcold try and target out Zapman, which is a strategy I think that more teams will start to do against Persephone teams. Is why kill the Persephone early? It doesn't matter. She's still there and dealing damage. So let's kill the other carry. Let's kill Zap. But Zap's positioning is solid, and the peel that he gets from NeilMah is just A+. I mean, Dimi gets knocked up instantly upon blinking in. Then Breez comes in and tries to do the exact same thing. NeilMah's right there to peel him away, and then a really good ultimate that brings them back again into Petrify and into Paul's flourish damage all at the same time. FrostiaK, thinking that his front line will still be there and absorbing some damage, blinks in and up downs, and they'd already been eviscerated, and then it's just a matter of chasing down the lone Ravana.
Oh, and Breez and Spudio might get collapsed on here. Breez still has the ultimate. If he recognizes the danger in time, it will be okay. Grasp of Death comes out first. Spudio won't be there to get inside the Horus ultimate, and Belair pops him. They'll be able to grab the tier 2 tower and left as well.
Yeah, that's a 3-level lead for Camazotz, and the carries don't get to play the game anymore. And this build that Prime has gone for, as soon as he finishes the dual morph, he started off with that tiny trinket, and I was curious as to where he was going to go. Feeling like they needed that extra oomph when they group up. He goes for Pythag's piece, but that means that as soon as you start losing, these characters like Xing and Camazotz get real tanky real quickly, and you've got no pet at all in the build for PrettyPriMe. Belair doesn't have magical defense, but just being level 18, his natural stats, even as an assassin, make him pretty hard to bring down.
And I don't think KDA is everything, but in this case, I think it can be very illuminating. Prime started off at 1-0-2 because of that 3-0, right? So since then, he's been 1-4-0. I mean, this Isis, who's considered one of the best picks overall you can have in the game right now, runs the mid game for you, especially in that 3v3. They really haven't been able to get anything out of it. I think a big part of that is that Breez cannot keep up with NeilMah in terms of farming. It is really difficult for supports to find that nowadays, and that hasn't been there. And that FrostiaK has been largely invisible.
In this itemization for Outcold, I think the more I look at it, the less I like it. I mean, you've got a Camazotz in the other team, you've got a Xing that's going to heal a bunch with HP 5, and you've got Paul who rushes Bancrofts, and we have no anti-heal whatsoever for Outcold. That feels pretty inexcusable to me. I mean, even if Belair wasn't massive, how do you kill him without anti-heal? You just can't. I don't like the way that Outcold is built at all.
Belair has some aggressive positioning, and with NeilMah here to back him up, it's going to be trouble for Breez. I don't know if he recognized it. He doesn't have an ally to dash to, but it's not going to be a hard commit. He makes it out of there A-OK, and Belair will continue his assault on the map. At this point, they're probably just waiting and waiting to go back and grab this next FG and make their own big push. And they'll take some out of position members if they can get them, but this is more about setting up for FG.
I like the idea of just sending Prime and Spudio over to the left-hand side, get as much farm as they can, take this tier 2, because SK is going to be on fire. FrostiaK might send a flyer and see if he can steal it.
That's what this is, man. A risky late waiver wire pickup. As FrostiaK has been hit by the grasp of death. The Fire Giant is still in threshold to be stolen, but a little bit too early jumping in, and SK Gaming grabbed the objective cleanly.
I actually don't mind that play at all from FrostiaK. I think it's totally fine. Yeah. You use the ultimate there, you're already committed, you're up in 40 seconds. It might be enough time for FK to get a Phoenix, but were you that much of a threat anyways on that Phoenix defense? Probably not. I think it's fine. Plus you got Paul's ultimate. He's got 20% CDR, but it'll be down for at least a little bit longer. That means Breez and Dimi might be able to play the game.
And Outcold did get a tier 2 tower over on the left as well, so they have a path to that left side Phoenix if they can string a couple of team fight wins together. This right side Phoenix been cut down to half HP, and Zapman on the Medusa, especially with that Viper shot, should be able to make quick work of it. That is the right side Phoenix for SK. Plus mid, Sam was here unchecked. Hello.
He'll take that. No minions necessary. Fire Giant buff enough for him. And the whole while, Belair is pushing the left-hand side.
So clean.
I mean, this is SK Gaming look like they're back in the zone. They aren't running around like they were in game number 2, and Outcold forced them into that game. I think Outcold did show you a good blueprint on ways that you can beat this team. Disrupt Sam early on, set Neil behind, and you can make things work.
But SK bounced back here in game number 3 and are in firm control, up 17,000 gold. And ready to start kicking things off. NeilMah goes right to the back line for Spudio, and they get Breez to take to the skies very early. FrostiaK will lose this trade, and he certainly does the right-hand side, but he gets the Fear No Evil out from Sam, though now it's a 5v4.
And it should be pretty easy for them. NeilMah's on the receiving end of Breez's initiation, but look at Belair keeping everybody busy.
Heads right towards Prime in the backline and does not let this Isis be a factor in the fights at all. Dimi does take Zapman up to the sky, but Belair still is on Prime duty way in the backline. That means Dimi gets absolutely no backup. Prime is running for his life. But I mean, how far can you really run? Paul is the one that gets the kill credit. That's all 3 Phoenixes down. 5 members of SK barreling down to the Titan room. Breez and Spudio trying to keep Outcold in the upper bracket. But now Breez been locked down, gets the dash off, but there's the cursed donk. Titan at half HP, at a quarter HP. And that'll do it for SK Gaming as they take down Outcold.
3 quick games. One in the middle kind of goes awry for SK Gaming, but games 1 and 3, especially if you eliminate the start of game 3, outside of that one engagement that goes really, really well for Outcold, SK Gaming dominated that game 3. It really didn't feel particularly close. I agree. I think Outcold had a good opportunity. They had a window to win that game 3. They get 3 kills at level 1s and 2. They kill the mid 3v3 all by themselves. Don't lose anybody. And then they do nothing.
They watched as SK climb right back into relevance towards the end of that game. It's still tough. I think that aura for SK is certainly still there, though probably a little bit diminished after that game 2 loss because that one was a bit rough. But for the most part, SK have come out and put everyone else on notice. This is the team that you all are measuring yourselves against and trying to beat right now, and they look plenty tough.
Look, FrostiaK Susano won games at the SPL level over and over and over again last year.
Sure.
It's not a surprise that a team as good as SK Gaming can lose to FrostiaK having a good game and Breez having a good game alongside it. I don't think it really changes that much for the trajectory of either of these teams. I still expect Outcold to struggle whenever FrostiaK doesn't get that Susano.
Sure.
And I still expect SK to do very well this week.
Congrats to the fellas of SK Gaming for grabbing this win and moving on that upper bracket. Be a quick break. We'll be right back with more Desk and the interview.
And just like that, the Pro League team puts it together and professionally takes the win. SK Gaming, 2 games over 1. Outcold do put up a fight, but Anatoly, this one I think proved just how strong SK Gaming can be. Game number 2 was obviously a win in the other direction, but I think looking at the way game 1 went and the way game 3 was sort of an answer back, I think that's really what you've got to internalize.
SK Gaming was definitely tested this entire set, especially in the beginning of game number 3 when they lost 3 members to start things off because of FrostiaK's invade at level 1 at the red buff. He was able to strip that one away, hit level 2 over FrostiaK, and was able to help PrettyPriMe on the Isis get the kills. But then the rotation from Zapman as well, the 4-man collapse onto both PrettyPriMe and I believe onto FrostiaK gave SK Gaming some more life going into game 3.
Absolutely. You know, we saw the correct bans coming out. No Susano for the jungler. That was pretty intense. Keep Breez off of that Circuit. And then all of a sudden, FrostiaK, 1 kill but 8 assists. And that kind of set up his teammates to do the work. Belair shows up, stands up strong, and makes the big moves as well.
Yeah, nothing Sam could do about that spirit ball early on, but then also a lot of credit to Belair on this Camazotz. Great presence from him throughout the game. He made a sick play around this blue buff, and this was all OCG early game.
Exactly. This was where OCG was actually able to make the impact. 3 kills in a row there, but it felt like they just put everything into that triple kill and nothing after the fact. Outcold was obviously able to find a kill or 2 after, but it was all SK from there. Big team play.
Their synergy started to really show once the Xing ultimate caught out Breez and Dimi before they used any sort of their CC immunities to follow up with the Petrify from Zapman. You could tell the teamwork there. And then even some of the solo work out of Belair. This was that 1 triple kill around the blue buff.
Yeah, looking for the individual kills, the jump and the basics, and well, everything else. Belair has not been as inconsistent as FrostiaK is kind of the king of that, but I think what Belair has done on land has been rather impressive.
That play right there. Xing ultimate, Petrify. Nothing for FrostiaK to do. He was just a little bit too late to that party. The frontline collapses from Outcold Gaming. SK just run through that tier 2 tower.
Paul, Persephone. That's just what my notes say. No, for real.
No, honestly, yeah. That was a great solo kill from Paul onto PrettyPrime's Isis, hitting that grasping death from a distance, but not just for the damage and the kill potential, but also ways to shut down Breez. Every time he would go in and be aggressive on the Horus to dash in, to look for the stun, look for the knockup, he was met with that crippling grasping death. Couldn't do anything about the Persephone from Paul.
Got to see a couple of big ultimates from Zapman as well. The Medusa certainly putting in the work here. Fantastic, fantastic game from SK Gaming. As you would expect them to kind of bounce back after a game number 2, figure out what went awry, shape it up, ship it out, and then find the victory here. So a pleasure to kind of watch SK Gaming go ahead and do what they can. We've got Zapman and Sam for Soccer standing by. Let's see what they have to say.
Guys, congratulations on your win. Game 1, 19-0, don't get killed once. Then game 2, Neil misses the stun on Speed. Speed gets stolen. It all kind of goes from there. Were you guys frustrated at all during game 2? What was the team mentality like at that point?
I would say we were definitely frustrated. I know I was, because those kind of 50-50 plays kind of can lose a game. Normally good teams, after they win that kind of play, they do what FrostiaK did. They invade our backs. Sam stays level 1. If you contest, you don't get ahead. So losing that 50-50 kind of just like put a bad taste in our mouth, and it was just hard to come back from that.
Well, even in game 3, it was a bit of a rough start, right? Because that's where you all get 3-0'd. But it really felt like they didn't have a way to capitalize on that pressure. What was it that you all did to not let them, turn that 3-0 start into a bigger lead?
Well, it was basically just the one fight it was kind of like Oracle / the Red.
Yeah.
I guess I was able to get a 2-man Han battle, and everybody just went in off that. We got 2 free kills, and that just kind of put us right back in it. So, yeah.
I mean, you guys come into this tournament as the top seed. You guys made a placement week run last year. How much are you leaning on that experience this year to feel like you guys are one of the favorites here?
I mean, it's already better than last year, because last year we lost the first game. So, thank you. We won the first game, and I feel like it's only up and up from here. We know we got to keep it clean against every team. Every team can play well. Every team knows how to capitalize on mistakes. So for here on out, we're just going to keep trying to play well, keep trying to play clean and disciplined.
Well, you all are actually the first SPL win, I believe, right? The other 2 teams, Space Station, had dropped down, as did Obey. Does that weigh on you all at all? Do you feel like you're carrying any torch for the SPL at all, or does it just kind of show you that the whole pool is this good at this point?
Yeah, I don't think it puts any extra weight on us in any way. I mean, I guess it just shows that everybody's pretty strong. Everybody has the capability of winning. But, yeah, I mean, we're just doing our own thing still. It doesn't really affect us.
Sam, I think towards the back half of Phase 2, your level of play really stepped up. Do you feel that same way? Do you feel like you're playing at a higher level now than you were earlier on in the year?
Yeah, I think I'd say so. Yeah, I definitely feel like I'm playing a lot stronger, but still made some pretty bad mistakes today, so just got to try to improve.
All right, congratulations on the win here, SK. Looking forward to seeing y'all up here a couple more times throughout the rest of the week. We still got plenty more coming, though. We'll be right back with y'all in just a few minutes.